guys. So
checking. And so then we rolled into today having action being taken on what is called Section 230. I bet Trent can explain this best, but President Trump has now basically told big tech that, hey, if you act like a publisher, we're going to take away your liability, special privileges. Do I have that right?
Pretty much, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so what do you guys think of it? You think this is good? This will actually fix big tech censorship, or is this just the beginning? Is there going to be more? Will there be more? Does more need to be done, or will this solve all the problems? I guess no.
So let me just back up 1 second. I'll explain 230 for a moment here. I'm just going off memory and I'm not reading it verbatim. So basically, the context is 230 kind of establishes that these tech companies are not liable for the actions of their users. So if a user comes on their platform and, says or does something against another user, then the person who owns the website or the company that owns the website, Twitter, Facebook, for example, they're not liable for the actions that between those users or the conduct of those users. So they kind of have this protection saying, we're not liable for the things that our users are doing and saying. So this is why we were able to have this kind of like free and open internet for a very long time. And that was a pretty good until all the tech companies became super massive monopolies and then started abusing the good faith and the power that this law and this legal exemption gave them and started enforcing political policies and agendas that ultimately started censoring and shadow banning people and causing basically the elimination of free speech as we knew it on the internet. Is pretty much in full effect at this point. You say the wrong thing on a stream like this, or you say the wrong word on YouTube, or you publish the wrong thing on Medium, and you're shadow banned, your accounts are being deleted. And it goes even more extreme that if you do it enough and you keep getting enough attention, you end up like Laura Loomer, where you're just completely banned from everything and you can't even have a bank account. And Facebook is declaring you, a public enemy #1. So they've kind of overreached because they've had this protection, and that it kind of enabled them to start implementing things like this fact check, which the fact check wasn't even a fact check. First and foremost, Trump stated an opinion about the future of something that might happen. If we do this, this might happen, is basically what he was saying. So that you can't really, there's nothing a fact check, it's an opinion. And then basically they said, we're fact checking it by linking to someone at CNN's opinion. And they didn't disclose the fact that actually Twitter is working with some like political group that gave them money and that they're working with, or I don't know if money was exchanged or not. Actually, I would have to confirm that. But I know they're working with some political group that is pushing for mail-in ballots and all this thing, when historically there's a massive like record of voter fraud with mail-in ballots. I mean, even if there isn't mail-in ballots, there's still a massive record of voter fraud. Like, so many people, I guess I'm going to age myself here, but like so many people forget like the 2000 election, and like our entire, presidency and democracy was hanging on literally these hanging chads, on these ballots, because people didn't push the little like hanging chad thing all the way through, and the paper was still kind of still attached, and like that determined who our president was, of kind of sort of, until the Supreme Court stepped in. But we've had issues with voter fraud in every election I can remember. So of course, if you enable people to only vote via the mail and you start mailing ballots to people, that's going to lead to election fraud. I mean, and voter fraud. I mean, in the complex I'm in, someone broke into the mailbox. Who knows? Maybe they were going in, for unemployment checks or something. But like, people can break into mailboxes. The mail can be intercepted. Things can get lost in the mail. Signatures might not match the signatures they have in the DMV, which is what's happening, I believe, in New Jersey right now. And they had to throw a bunch of ballots out. So historically, there is voter fraud, and there was no fact check here. So, essentially what they were doing was they were spreading propaganda. They were, essentially saying, oh, we don't like the president's opinion, so we're going to share an opposing opinion that isn't even factual and then call it a fact check. And they themselves were actually spreading misinformation by doing that. So the irony here is they literally were linking to fake news as the fact check. And there were no facts involved because, again, we're just talking about two people's opinions here of what might happen in the future. So it's pretty ridiculous that was the catalyst that finally got us this executive order that might give us a chance to get our free speech back on the internet.
I want to jump on two things there. Number one, I think the reason, because you could argue Twitter banning conservatives out of bias and shadow banning people is in violation of 230. You could argue that, but I think the fact checking was a clear intervention into the conversation that they never did in this way before. I think Trump feels he could finally get away with this executive order. And secondly, shout out to Laura Loomer. We always mention her in a lot of these recent episodes because she's running for Congress in Florida, killing it, even though she doesn't have a Twitter or Facebook, nothing. And when her campaign tries to go on, they ban them instantly. She is overcoming this. I mean, she's at an extreme disadvantage and has to work 10 times harder, but she's still killing it. I hope she wins, but her lawsuit also, coincidentally, the same time all this was going down, got thrown out by the DC Circuit Court, I believe. I mean, I guess she's going to appeal it, obviously, but
she is.
That to me, what she's doing is the bold action we need. I mean, this is bold action from Trump, but you need action on all fronts because Congress is, well, I'll be blunt, it's full of boomers that don't know anything about technology. I mean, even Matt Gaetz was saying on Bannon's podcast the other night, he's like, I had to teach Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, and a bunch of other people what shadow banning was. I had to explain to them. They didn't know what it was. He had to explain to them. That's why I love that man. Matt Gaetz he's fighting the battles that nobody else is in Congress. I mean, he's a true star in the GOP right now of the new populist right.
Definitely. I want to say, I would be like a kid on Christmas morning if Laura Loomer gets in Congress. Like, you have any idea how happy I would, like, how exciting it would be to see her in front of the pulpit and having the floor? Oh my God. Oh my God, that is
the fireworks attraction of every single day. I mean, like the way the right sort of fetishizes AOC, it's like, oh my God, she's so stupid. She said this stupid thing, and they every single day they do that. They're gonna do that to Laura Loomer.
Only Laura Loomer actually is smart and has good stuff to say and can combat all these other crazies, like with legit logic and facts and whatever.
Yeah, she's pretty focused on the facts.
And she was the one that
she's a trained journalist. I mean, people forget that. Like, she's an actual journalist, the real deal.
She worked for James O'Keefe and did the Hillary Clinton videos inside the DNC that were, viral videos during the 2016 election.
Yeah. So I actually spoke to her earlier today, and I can confirm she will be appealing. And this executive order is the exact argument that she was making in her legal case. It's kind of it's an interesting situation because, in her case, she was actually given a judge that was appointed by Trump, but this judge is, I don't know, a boomer or some kind of old school Republican or something, I don't know, and just didn't understand the context of it. And then for them to make the decision, amidst what was happening with Trump and this executive order, and to do that the day before his executive order, I mean, they basically, now she has the perfect grounds for an appeal. So now she can actually appeal this and use this executive order as her argument. I mean, essentially, it was her argument. She literally was referencing the same case that's being referenced in the executive order in her legal argument. So now that this executive order has been passed, this gives her a legal leg to stand on, and it gives her a much greater chance in an appeal. I mean, it's possible she could end up going to the Supreme Court over this. But, this could be the case law that's needed to actually put this in place. I mean, this could be, kind of the Roe v. Wade of social media, to, get her back online. I mean, in her situation, what's really fascinating is she essentially has to run for Congress to get her rights back as an American citizen to be able to have a social media account. That's insane.
And what I keep telling people is that if you want anything done about tech censorship, about big tech censorship, you gotta support her, because she's going to, if she wins, she'll be the only person in Congress that's banned from all these platforms. She's the only one that's feeling the pain. None of these people are feeling the pain, and none of these people are below the age of 60. So they don't get what she's going through and why this is an important issue. She is the only hope, I think, of actually getting something done. Trump is very limited, but things need to go through Congress to have actual permanent, well, mostly permanent, long-term change done. And I mean, Matt Gaetz is great, but I think Loomer is your best shot at this stuff.
Definitely.
I mean, it'd be interesting. I mean, I'd be interested to see Trump support her or endorse her and back her up. And I say this as someone who doesn't even consider themselves to have a political party. But yeah, I think as a change agent, I think Laura Loomer could be very powerful. She'd be, I think, one of the youngest, or if not the youngest person in Congress if she were to get elected.
Yeah, she's only like 25, 27.
Yeah, something like that. So I think she's 25 now, possibly. But
Nah, I think she's like 27. She's a few years older than I am. So.
Sam's been keeping track. It's like, damn, what do I got to do here? Look, I'm
actually, real quick about that. I actually know someone who actually worked with Laura at Project Veritas. I don't want to mention his name because I don't know if he's undercover working for James, but I can tell you that this person has been on my show before, and I consider him a mentor. And a few years ago, before Laura became Laura, so to speak, he was actually trying to set me up with her. It was actually pretty funny. So
there you go.
You didn't take it.
Mix it up a little bit there, Sam.
And then she just skyrocketed, and nothing happened. Although if I were to meet her, she does seem like an amicable person, though, and I think she's very misunderstood. So
yes. I misunderstood her for the longest time, and then when I saw the praise she was getting from certain people like Roger Stone, Milo, I was like, okay, I need to pay more attention to this girl. And then I realized I got it. I understood what she was doing. Her activism, I think, is smart as hell. And I did get to meet her at CPAC at the actual floor when Alex Jones came in to CPAC and started drawing attention and disrupting as he always does. She was with them, so I got actually her congressional card too, with her phone number and all that. So maybe I can give that to you, Sam. Because she is 27. Can't confirm she's 27. But and I talked to her for a bit and talked to her at the Cernovich part and a few others. She was really cool.
I'll tell you guys more details off air. So
Oh.
But anyway, the one thing I do want to point out too with this whole censorship thing is it's not just the big people like and I say relatively big people, meaning people who are more notable like Milo and Gavin and Laura anymore. It's not just them getting censored. Even if it's smaller channels like my channel or your guys' channel or even Trent's channel, or platforms on YouTube. I mean, I've pretty much been throttled on YouTube ever since February when I first mentioned COVID. Basically,
Yep.
my video.
Well, a whole lot of people are too.
My video.
You're not the only. There's a
Everyone
whole lot
is.
of people.
Yeah.
They keep
Yeah.
getting stuck in that processing thing. That's happened to you, hasn't it?
Oh yeah. That happens to me all the time now. It's gotten to the point now where just an hour stream, like an hour-long stream, will take up to 48 hours to process with YouTube now. So
probably because they're running extra algorithms and extra AI against it that they weren't running before. That would be my.
Well,
but there's some prick there too, because like it's like they're not gonna, and they're not even gonna really tell you what they're doing. Like they're gonna let you stick with your false hope that you're gonna work on your content and you start building good content, and you build yourself up to where you have enough of followers and you have enough of views, and they're like, oh, by the way, you don't meet our community guidelines, so fuck off. And like, I mean, this is the state we're in right now. But they're gonna wait. I mean, of course they're gonna wait. They're gonna wait until you're someone, that you have enough of followers to where they start blanking you out. But yeah, I mean, that's really where Google's at. They're not really gonna railroad somebody with like 100 followers or something like that, but like somebody with like, thousands.
But see, they're going to prevent them from getting thousands.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. They're identifying them early.
They think, and this is where they're going to get. This is where they're getting caught too, because they think that we don't know. Like they're thinking, oh well, how they think that we either don't know or they that we can't fucking prove it. Like, and well, joke's on you because the EO just happened.
Yeah, that's the thing is like I think it's very important to note that like after they took down the big stars, I think they started going after the smaller stuff and preventing it from growing. Like, look, I'll bring up somebody I don't like, but who was growing was Nick Fuentes. He was growing. He does have sort of a ceiling with how many people he can kind of reach, but he was growing on YouTube, and then they banned him. Now he's on D Live, doesn't get anywhere as near as many views or as traffic as he used to, and he's growing on Twitter now. I will be shocked if he survives the rest of the year on Twitter. I'd be genuinely shocked.
Well, I wonder if this will help him out too. Like this EO will start helping him out too.
I mean, I've experienced so much censorship just with my own social media accounts. I mean, my Twitter account, I can't get past its current. I mean, it's basically stagnant around the same followers that I've had for the last 4 years, pretty much since the 2016 election. I can't seem to break above it or under like 5,000. It just kind of stays there. And I know people have stopped following me, and I know people have started following me. I get the notifications, and my number doesn't seem to increase. No matter how many notifications I get that I get new followers, it doesn't really seem to make sense. I mean, I really doubt that there's a ratio of for every follower I gain, someone leaves. That just doesn't seem that realistic to me. Meanwhile, Medium is like the worst offender. I mean, the site is pretty much unusable at this. What was really scary about what Medium did is they actually went back in time in my content. So they started picking posts from the past, things that were published that had been sitting on Medium for years, and all of a sudden going back and deleting it and saying that it now retroactively violates the new community guidelines that they just, and that they're going to delete it. Yep. So the big things that they came after me for. So I had a post about, why it's not a good idea to start censoring conservatives from your platform. And they didn't. And after I wrote that, I started noticing that anytime I published anything after that, my ability to get a post to reach my following was diminished after that. I'm pretty sure I potentially got shadow banned, or like a soft shadow ban. And then once they passed these, like their latest round of whatever their community guidelines are, they deleted my Seth Rich analysis article, which the funniest thing about that article was one of my main quotes, and one of the main things I focus on is that Obama himself stated that the whole WikiLeaks DNC thing was a leak and not a hack. I mean, it was in Obama's final press conference as president of the United States. His final press conference, he straight up says it was a leak. So, but that, of course, undid the whole Russiagate narrative, and they had to pretend that Obama never said that. So they hated the fact that I pointed out that argument, among other things that were in that article. So, they retroactively went and deleted after it had been on their site for years. So they're not just censoring stuff that we're posting today. They're actively going back and starting to censor things from the past, preventing it from showing up. And what was really fascinating was, around this time, if you Googled my name, it would autocorrect to Trent Lipinski alt-right. And so what I had done is I was like, all right, cool. If Google's going to do that, which they shouldn't be able to do, just autocorrect anytime someone types your name into a search engine to a term that, basically at this point doesn't even. I wrote an article that was titled Trent Lipinski alt-right. I published it on my Medium profile, and I just laid out a bunch of my insane, crazy political beliefs, so that if anyone did actually get autocorrected to that, then it would get sent to that Medium search result as the top result. So they would at least get my spin of the situation instead of, who knows what. And so got rid of my Seth Rich article. That disappeared off Google at exactly the same moment. And they stopped autocorrecting my name, and they stopped featuring my Medium account when you search for my name. And they stopped featuring my articles, and my articles stopped showing up. So they kind of buried me basically on Google, because they figured out that I had figured out how to use their own algorithms again. It worked to my favor because they stopped doing this. But I mean, this speaks, the level of intricacy of what they're willing to do when they're trying to censor, and not just censor them, but also slander them. When you're autocorrecting someone's name to something that, didn't even necessarily have anything to do with me. And do I have libertarian beliefs? Absolutely. But I also have some progressive values. I toe the line. I'm kind of actually a moderate. It's a weird dichotomy to tell people that you're kind of a progressive, but that's actually kind of where I sit on the fence. These days, do I lean a little more right on some things? Of course. Other days, do I lean left? But I definitely don't have very much in common with today's left. If there's anything that I'm liberal on, I'm traditional, classic liberal on. And especially when it comes to regulations, I think it's a good thing that the government's stepping in and regulating big tech. Most people on the right are going to argue. So we're in this weird, place now where people like me get thrown into one group or the other group. And for a company, Google, a multi-billion-dollar mega corporation, to just, we're going to, slander this person with this term that, again, at this point doesn't even have a meaning. No one even uses the term alt-right. It was just a creation of the left in the moment after the 2016 election. They shouldn't be able to do that. I should have been able to sue Google for that. They were so getting rid of 230 protection for these companies when they're violating the rights of their users and violating the good faith of our country and the foundation of our Constitution and our they should lose that protection. I should be able to sue Google, and I should be able to sue Medium for them shadow banning me and not giving them they blocked my access to my followers at this point. Basically, they're deleting my content and blocking my right to free. They've slandered my name. Why can't I have any legal recourse against them?
Yeah, and they get protection that newspapers don't get, a lot of things don't get. And funny thing, you mentioned Obama. I was checking now to see if it was still the case, but I don't know if you knew, but he was following you on Twitter for a while.
Was he? That was probably because he auto followed me when they were like doing one of those like auto follow campaigns.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't imagine the actual president was like actually reading my tweets. If he was, that's cool. But whatever, man.
I can see it. I can see him say. I can see him in the Lincoln bedroom. Oh, hey, you know that Trent Lipinski's pretty good. Let's give him a follow. It's gonna be pretty good. Yeah, no.
You know what's?
I think like.
I gotta say, I voted for the guy, and I regret it now, especially in light of the Russiagate transcripts that have been released by the DOJ.
That shit was crazy.
I mean, that like,
wrong.
Oh my god!
Basically, Obama didn't relinquish his power, and he's possibly still in power and running a shadow government to this day. So
this dude. The funny
if he's
thing
following
is,
me on Twitter, like, man, I don't know.
The funny thing is, when all this stuff was coming to light, I remember Trump winning the day after Trump won. President Obama, he went in front of the pulpit and he was like, he was talking about how he's gonna make sure he hands off Trump with a as good of a transition as he can because President Bush did the same for him or whatever. And I'm like, oh shit. And then all this stuff is coming to light. I'm like, that is so dirty. Like he went on world television and said he was going to be straight and clean and hand him a clean, a transition. And then he does this shit.
Well, I mean, going after Flynn and what they did to Flynn, I mean, that's insane. I mean, this is a general in the military. Flynn was their guy. Like, Flynn reported to Obama and, had been implementing his agenda. And basically Flynn's like, you're no longer going to be president. I'm going to the next, I'm moving forward into the next, into the next presidency here. Like, this is a transition of power. Like, that's a normal thing that's supposed to happen, especially for a member of the military to start serving the next president. So
sounds like they didn't like him though.
Well, obviously they threatened his child and forced him into bankruptcy.
Obama specifically, it sounds like, had some sort of like
personal beef or something.
And that's where the whole what did Obama know, when did he know it, that's where really the questions kind of come in. Is like, well, you could tell these two didn't get along. And was this Obama, or the very, very, very least, his people's way of saying, we're not going to screw this guy and get back at him, but we're going to screw Trump. We're going to create collateral damage, taking this guy out. Because that's where I remember when this stuff came out. I'm like, why did they go after this guy? And there seems to be many layers to that.
Yeah, they went after him for a lot of different reasons. I mean, he knows where all the bodies are buried because he was a part of the Obama administration.
Yeah.
Like he was. So, you got a guy who knew where all the bodies were buried, who knew everything that had, all the levels of, declassification, or he had access to security clearances and everything. He knew what they were doing. He knew what they had access to, and he was a threat to them because he could. So they had to prevent him from working with Trump so that he could not throw them under the bus, essentially. I mean, and then now, I mean, the other thing to consider is Biden is just as implicated in this as well. So,
I mean, he signed off requesting for an unmasking.
Correct. So, Biden, I mean, could legitimately have charges or something brought against him. I mean, what we're actually talking about here is treason. If that's the crazy thing. But it's just so crazy what that we now have these transcripts and we're able to see them, and that they were actually used in court to get Flynn off. So that was the other fun kind of like thing that I started seeing, was like when this information first came out, like a lot of the people that I know that are on the left, they were like, they were silent for like a week, and then after a week they just decided it was a conspiracy theory. And I was just like, no, look, here is the actual declassified conversations from these people, you know, that the NSA had recorded and like had in their system. They're not even denying it. Like, but nope, the left decided it's just a conspiracy theory, and they're not going to pay attention to the actual transcripts of all of these people and what they actually said to each other. It's just insane. Like the cognitive dissonance that is happening right now in this country when you have these moments. I mean, for me, I always have my suspicions of things, and like I always suspected this was the situation with Flynn, and you know, I suspected that Obama was doing some weird stuff behind the scenes, but to get actual proof and confirmation of it declassified for the entire public to see, that makes it true. So that's no longer conspiracy. That's no longer, you know, there's no longer speculation here. We now can actually read their actual words and see what they actually did. And at that moment, it became truth. And then that was just too much for some people to handle. And then now, you know, you can't even, with the way that news is happening with COVID-19 and, you know, the election coming up, and now we've got what's happening in Minneapolis, and we're, you know, now we've got this executive order. I mean, the news is happening so fast. We didn't even get a chance to have a political discussion about what actually happened with Obama and Obamagate. And it's kind of a shame because, I mean, it just speaks to the volume of misinformation and propaganda that we've all been experiencing for the last 4 years. Like, we've all been just bombarded fake news and propaganda to the point where, you know, even people on the right can't tell what's true anymore because we're getting hit from so many different angles now.
You know, it feels like, have you ever seen A Clockwork Orange? It feels like that's what it feels like. It feels like we're being strapped to a chair with our eyes peeled open and forced to watch all this bullshit. Like, it just feels like it because it's like it's everywhere. All like you watch on television, right? The you know, the fake news, the CNN, MSDNC, all that shit, and it's just nothing. It's nothing but Minneapolis, just and how, you know, this, you know, Black Lives Matter and all this stuff, and then we'll get to that in a sec. But like, it's so thick, and it's like,
did you notice the switch flip from COVID-19 to basically this whole race war thing? Like,
like instantly.
Oh yeah.
You know,
because they know the COVID-19 shit ain't working. Like they realize that the public is not buying their bullshit. So it's like, oh, well, this is something that a lot of these people will get behind. Everybody loves a good race bait war. Let's go for this.
I think it's more the fact that every single day you turn on the news, you're coronavirus, COVID-19, mask, stay at home, blah, 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 blah. But, oh, there's something new. There's a riot. There's a city burning down.
Nobody gave a shit about COVID-19 when all these people were protesting and shit. Yeah. Oh, make sure you wear your mask when you're burning down a fucking Target or whatever.
Yeah, when they go to Target, like, whoa, bro, 6 feet, 6 feet. No, can't steal that TV, 6 feet.
Well, I have a quote for that, by the way, and it's a now infamous quote, but I think it's a quote that fits really well. To quote Rahm Emanuel, one of the biggest slime balls ever. You never want a serious crisis to go to waste because it gives you the opportunity to do things you could not do before.
See, and while I think that is very politically, like, you know, dirty and gross, I unfortunately have to say, I think Trump should kind of, you know, like he did with the immigration stuff, like locking down the borders for a while. You kind of need to do some of that.
Yeah. Well, timing is everything too.
So badly, you kind of you almost have to force yourself to do certain things you wouldn't be comfortable with in order to keep the more uncomfortable, worse side at bay.
Well, but this goes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think timing's everything too, because like we're starting to see like some of these people, like some of these like liberals or whatever, they're using that. They're trying to take advantage of this, but they end up like, it feels like they're overplaying their playbook. Like they're overplaying their playbook,
Yeah.
and people are smartening up. Like, you might not be like, and we'll start talking about the George Floyd stuff here in a minute.
Well, good example of what you're talking about is Governor Whitmer in Michigan. You know, she was like shutting it down, which because Michigan was getting hit pretty badly, especially in Detroit. Makes sense. Okay, fine. Then she was like, "You can't go on the Great Lakes. You can't go hunting." It's like, what? When we're on our
Why?
boat in the Great Lake, we're gonna maintain more than a 6 feet distance from the other boats. Okay, you're. I mean, I've been to Michigan many times. The core of that state is the sort of rural. It almost has its own version of redneck sort of isms. Like, yeah, there's hunting, but it's not the same hunting as like in the South or something, you know. And they have boating and snowmobiling is really big there. So when she goes after that, like that's gonna just annoy people. Like they can't even go out on their boat. I mean, come on, what are you gonna do? Sneeze on like
What was
the
it,
fish?
Massachusetts, that blocked the the selling of seeds? You couldn't even plant a garden. Like
Oh
you're
no,
at
I think that
home.
was Michigan too.
Was that Michigan too? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm losing track of all these states and what crazy laws or rules
that
they're
that
implementing.
woman is that woman is straight up crazy. If
Dude,
you ever
doesn't
hear
she
her
look
talk,
ter-
she yeah. Not only does she look crazy, then you hear her talk, and it's like, no,
She's a
you sound
terror.
the way you look, completely fucking batshit crazy.
Dude, she threw her husband under the bus. Did you see that shit? She's like in
Yeah,
a press conference when he, basically stupidly admitted to doing getting a political favor for like a boating deal or something. I forget what it was, like a parking spot at the marina or being able to use the boat earlier. Because he basically said, "Do you know who my wife is?" and got
oh
us, sweet
Jesus,
deal. I know, pretty bad. He
oh my
basically said
God.
that. And then Governor Whitmer goes in front of the podium and goes, in a failed attempt at a joke, my husband. It's like, whoa, bitch. Like, Jesus, she just came off nasty.
Like,
That's
yeah, come on.
business as usual in
If
California.
you say that, oh, do you know who I am? Do you know who I'm married to? You know it's not going to end well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you really do. If you have to resort to all of that, it's not good.
I would just said, get the fuck out of here. Like, what, like, who, yeah, it's that sort of elitism where they think they can just sort of get what they want, when you poor little peasants are locked away in your homes. Oh, we can still go boating. Oh, we're so nice.
I've switched to calling them the ruling class instead of elite because there's nothing elite about them.
Yeah.
And they don't really know what they're doing.
But we say,
Yeah.
I mean, we say elitists more in like a sarcastic tone.
Yeah, I know.
Where it's like, they think they're elite, but it's like that. It's like because and it's like the mannerisms too are very they're smug. They're very smug about like they know they're like in a way. I think like they're wrong. And a lot of them know they're wrong. They just don't give a shit, and they're acting this way just to. I don't know. I don't know if it's like just to piss you off or something. Like you realize this isn't going to end well for you, right? Just saying.
It's a combination of things. On different levels. I mean, the left has it, the right has their own versions of it too.
Yeah, that's true too.
That's why I like I said, I call them the ruling class at this point because that's kind of what they are. I mean, we have this breakdown in class structure, and you basically have this ruling class that just gets away with shit and does whatever they want, and then you have everyone else. And that's basically where we're at with society at this point. Like, we can talk about all the division and identity politics, all the different things that divide us, but that's what the ruling class want us to do because they don't want us to realize that it's basically them versus us. And the us is everyone who isn't in the ruling class.
Mm-hmm. This is why I love when people like Trump, I mean, it's a rare breed that they get to that level of super rich, but they're not a part of them. It's such I mean, it's such a cliche at this point that he's an outsider and all that, but we kind of forget just how special that is. And when he's gone, man, there's nothing else like
I
him.
think there's going to be like when Trump leaves, I think there's going to be a huge fucking hole. Like there's going to be a huge hole when he leaves. Because I just don't see it. I just don't see it in the Republican Party. I don't see anybody that's going to be like there. I'm thinking maybe if Don Jr. runs, but it's like I don't even know if he ran. Like I don't know if even he could match.
Well, according to Cernovich, Don Jr. actually does not want to be president at all.
Yeah, I mean, like there's going to be a hole. There's going to be a huge fucking hole as far as like just the career. Like he's so good at pulling out the worst in people. Like, yeah, it's just like he pulls them out. He pulls it out of them. Like, look at the whole Pocahontas thing, right? Look at the Elizabeth Warren thing. He baited her. He baited her to take a fucking a 23andMe test. Like it's like you played right into where he wanted you to. Like how do you? I mean, I don't know.
Like getting a presidential candidate to do that, and then you like see it on your phone. Like I would just sit back and be like, just enjoy that moment. Like that I got a presidential candidate to take a DNA test because I trolled her to. I trolled her to 23andMe. I mean,
and they're just boring. And the other names out there are just fucking boring. Like, oh my god, like just not even. It's you have to have something that people can unite around. Like you have to have something about you that people can just unite around. Like Mitt Romney, who the fuck is going to unite around that guy? It's more like people tried to follow him basically because they had to. So that was a recipe for fucking disaster.
Same thing with Biden right now.
Yeah.
Like, what is Biden's?
Like, well,
Biden doesn't have I've never seen a presidential campaign where their plan was to not let him do interviews or talk to the public.
Dude, but wait, the last interview didn't go so fucking well with those "you ain't black" comments.
Oh my god! Speaking of the ruling class, that shit right there.
Well, let me just interject on the Biden thing though. Did you guys hear what Alex Jones had to say about Biden?
Yo, what did he say?
I actually played because about an hour before I did this. Before I came on your show, I did a stream on the Whitfield report talking out the tech censorship thing, and I had to do on D Live because I was playing a clip of Alex Jones, but that's besides the point. Anyway, Alex has said something that has crossed my mind, which is that, in short, he thinks that they're putting in Biden as kind of the placeholder candidate, and then once the DNC convention hits, did I not call that shit? They're going to say, oh, Biden's sick. We need here's the new candidate, and that they're going to blindside us. That's the one thing that, and I mean, I bet Alex is right, because the one thing that you have to admit is that, and the one thing I haven't been able to figure out is why are they running Biden? Because
they have no one else. That's what I think. Why?
Well, say what you will about the Democrats, but they're. I mean, yeah, they are stupid, but they can't all be that stupid. So to me, they're using Biden to Trojan horse someone in. I mean.
But see, to me, that's a stupider strategy, because
it is.
Who has the second most votes is Bernie Sanders. And technically, he should get it then if Biden's going to drop out.
No, but they're going to wait. But they're going to wait until after the convention to railroad Bernie.
But see, that would just piss so many people off. They're
already pissed.
Yeah, they're already pissed. You're not really. There's not,
and they're already not voting for him. I mean, they want to cheat. That I ultimately think all they want to do at this point is cheat, and that was the whole point of this mail-in ballot thing. They wanted the whole COVID-19 thing to extend as long as possible so that they could destroy the economy, destroy all these small businesses, blame Trump for it, run a nostalgia campaign. Remember the good old days of Obama and Biden? Vote for Biden, you know? And I think they were trying to, you know, push that through, hoping they could get the mail-in ballots and use them to cheat. I think that was their strategy. If Trump ends up blocking that from happening and they can't use the mail-in ballots to cheat, then they're either going to have to try to find some other strategy. Possibly they were going to try to use social media to cheat. Trump just blocked them on that today. So, you know, they're planning something. Is there going to be a swap out for another candidate? I mean, anything's possible at this point. This year's definitely not going as I thought. But, you know, it's at the same time, they're wasting time. They have the opportunity right now, if there really is this, you know, dark horse candidate that they want to put, like, why not get that name recognition out there? Why not get that, you know, why not build that momentum? Because right now all they're doing is losing people, because people are so turned off to Biden and the crazy stupid things he keeps saying. I mean, they've got to be losing voters at this point. So I don't think this strategy is going to work for them. Like, I can't imagine that enough people out there are just going to vote for Biden because he's Biden. And the fact of the matter is, if he ends up debating Trump and there's actually debates, it's over.
It's over.
I think what they'll try to do is definitely avoid the debate, which I think they're ultimately not going to be able to do. And Trump will make it happen. You'll bait him into it. Secondly, is I think they're going to put a lot more effort behind the VP candidate, which I'm guessing is going to be Kamala Harris. It could be somebody else, but I would put my money on her. Klobuchar is now out of the count now after some interesting news that's broken about her. But I think they're just going to focus on the VP, because especially if it's Kamala, if it's a black woman, they can course correct everything with Biden. Oh, look how progressive he is. He's empowering a black woman. You know, they're going to use the race shit and the gender shit again, which is a failing strategy, but they're going to use it again because they have not learned from that and they still think it wins. But I don't see him taking Biden now, especially after Obama endorsed him, Pelosi, all these big names endorsed him. They would look terrible if he dropped out.
But see,
it would look so bad.
But
if it's for a health reason,
hold on. Sorry to interject, though. This was the other part of Alex's theory, which, I mean, I don't know if it's even possible, but you mentioned Kamala Harris. So here's kind of my theory. Okay, say Biden gets sick at the convention, and by the way, for anyone who wants to clip this, feel free to, because I have a feeling I might be right about this, but Biden might get sick, and then if Kamala gets the VP nomination, even though she's not the main candidate, could they? I don't know if there's ever been precedent for this, but if Biden were to get sick and drop out with Kamala as his VP, could she technically run on the ticket then as POTUS?
She could potentially, if the delegates switch their votes to her. So if the delegates give their votes to Biden and Kamala, and then the moment the convention ends, Biden drops out, and then all of the delegates then commit to Kamala as the new president. I mean, they could, in theory, do that, because the Democratic Party, the way it works with their convention, I mean, you have the super delegates and the delegates anyways, and they have this whole delegate system where it's essentially those representative delegates that are for, you know, those are the votes that actually matter, that actually determine the candidate. Which is what we saw in 2016, and that's why Bernie, who was supposed to get the nod, who didn't get the nod, they just manipulated the delegate system rather than having the total, raw votes to actually get Hillary through. So, so they could manipulate it.
That was some dirty fucking shit.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Alex, weren't you gonna say something?
Yeah, shoot. No, you guys kind of went over some of the stuff I was going to talk
Still
about.
waking up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there. I just want to go and let you guys have a chance to speak.
It's been good. It's been good. I'm not gonna lie. Like, but yeah, that was some dirty shit. Like when they railroaded Bernie Sanders. Not that I like Bernie Sanders or anything, but like they really did railroad the guy. They were like, there were some states that were switching up the voting hours or whatever because they do that.
It was voter fraud.
Yeah, it was. It literally was voter fraud. Like you're changing the hours, like the voting hours last minute to railroad a lot of the Bernie voters. It's like, dude, then they did it again. They did it for a second time. They're like, there's no way we're letting this fucking commie win.
Yeah.
Not on our watch.
Did you see the stock market bounce after he dropped out? I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
And Bernie's
that
good
was
for
crazy.
the markets.
He boosted the market, like major market boost. The second Bernie.
Well, you would have thought he would have learned the first time that they were gonna do something to go and screw him over. And that's the thing too. Like, even if Biden did drop out, and let's say there's nothing extra nefarious going on, since he did drop out, like I don't even think he'd be eligible to, like I don't even really know what would happen if Biden dropped out.
So Bernie technically suspended his campaign, so he's no longer campaigning. And I believe did he actually endorse? I think he did endorse, possibly.
I think
I thought he did endorse Biden.
Endorsement, yeah.
Yeah, so that might be construed as him fully dropping out. But initially, he only suspended his campaign, and I don't think he completely dropped out, but I'm not sure.
Well, because remember, he wanted to stay on the ballot in New York. Like, he was really adamant on staying on the ballot. And I'm like, what's that all about?
Because he knew something could happen. I don't know. I mean, Bernie, the man's got to grow a spine if he wanted to be president, and he just proved he didn't have it. Because, I mean, let's not forget, in 2016, you had a DNC data analyst who was murdered in cold blood in the streets, DC, and we still don't talk about this for some reason.
Seth Rich.
I said his name. You just might get this video and this channel banned. I'm sorry, guys.
I mean,
we're never having you on again.
He was a whistleblower. He gave the data to WikiLeaks, and the reason he did it was to prove voter fraud, that Bernie was basically winning, and they did everything they could to prevent it from happening, to put Hillary on the ticket. So, I mean, for people to argue that voter fraud doesn't happen just 4 years after we just had voter fraud in the last election to select Hillary Clinton in the first place against Bernie Sanders, is just like, wow, people's memories are so short, because this literally just happened. Like, we just had voter fraud in the last election. If you look back on like the stuff that happened in the state of Nevada, I mean, there were Democratic offices that got broken in. Data was stolen. Like there was ballots that went missing. Like there was all kinds of crazy stuff that was going on behind the scenes that the DNC was covering up. And the whole point of the whole WikiLeaks thing was to reveal public. That was the intention.
But Trent, it's unsubstantiated.
Wait, wasn't there like wasn't there like an actual court case about that?
There are several
and the court ruled that like the DNC is allowed to be corrupted, since it's not a federal, like, since it's its own party, like they can be as corrupt as they want, if I remember correctly.
Correct. So the thing that I'm wondering, is this like part of Trump's like strategy for re-election? Because he held on to the Russiagate data. He had access to that the moment he was president. So he held on to that for a really long time before getting it fully declassified through the courts. And why he even went through the whole court process and did it by the book confuses me, honestly. I mean, on one hand, you've got to respect he went and did it by the book. On the other hand, it's like, why didn't you reveal this like when you were being impeached fraudulently? And like this proves this whole thing was a hoax. Like, why did we go through that as a country if you had evidence sitting on the table that proves that they were setting you up?
Well, it was strategy, because if he would have cut it off, like as if he would have cut it off right out of the gate, they would have mounted up a defense like, oh, see, he cut it off early, so he's trying to cover it up. Whereas letting it play out, even though it sucked ass, it makes the Dems look so fucking terrible. Because it's like, look, they rolled all this shit out for 2 years, spent millions and millions of fucking dollars, and they got nothing to fucking show for it. And they proved exactly what we knew all along. It's like,
And that's another thing too. Before we move on, I want to say is again how quickly people forget things. Just not too long ago, a president was being impeached. That hasn't happened since Clinton, and it
He
was
might be
the
impeached
most.
again.
oh yeah.
They're
That's
talking
it's
about
coming.
that now.
They're
You're the
gonna. I
first
think
president impeached twice.
if he gets when he gets
I-
a second term, I think they're gonna find something with the coronavirus handling that they're gonna use to impeach him with. I think that's where they're looking. 'cause
I
the other
think if they
thing is
handle the voting
impeachment.
laws, I'm gonna call this. If Trump is more, is more aggressive with these voting things, I think there's a possible red wave. I think there's a complete red wave.
Well,
I think
Yeah,
Trump wins.
it's
Trump
fine.
wins. Trump wins. They take back the House. They keep the Senate. I think.
Well, that's the thing that keep yelling at these like people like Ann Coulter that I think go a bit too far. They to the point where they almost sound
Well, I mean,
anti-Trump.
Ann Coulter's batshit crazy. I'm not sure. I'm not sure she's the subject matter expert on anything at this stage
Well,
of the game.
The thing is she still has 2 million followers on Twitter. She's she writes
Hey.
best-selling books. I mean, she's a smart person. She is right on a lot of things, but these people that hold such a purity to Trump, where they have these ridiculous standards for him, they forget he is not a dictator. He can't just go build the wall right now. He can't just go and do all these things right there, right now. He needs to go through Congress. And if you have a Democrat controlled House, well, you ain't getting shit done. And if you want to see him fulfill his promises, as they keep saying, you need to elect him and elect the people in Congress so he can get stuff done. Because people, they go, oh well,
Yeah.
he used his emergency powers to build the wall. Why didn't he do that on day one? Well, if he did that on day one, they would be calling him a dictator. They'd be going after. They'd probably impeach him for it. I mean, they don't understand that you can't just because you were given certain powers, just because you can do certain things, doesn't mean you should. And maybe in some ways can, I guess you could say, because of the repercussions of it. I mean, yes, there is optics cucking in some ways on some things you'll see on the right where they get worried about like offensive things people said. But optics do matter, and they can have staggering effects. Speaking of optics, I want to mention one last thing about the Section 230 thing, and this is something we were just talking about right before we started streaming, was Twitter's public policy account tweeted out that this executive order is, quote, a reactionary and politicized approach to a landmark law. Hashtag Section 230 protects American innovation and freedom of expression. And it's underpinned by democratic values. Wow.
Guys, I
Double speak.
I have a friend who wants to say something to you.
Oh, sure.
Hold on. Yes, Jack, you can come in. Hello, this is Jack Dorsey. Please don't overrule me, President Trump. Please don't.
Oh shit!
Please don't regulate me.
That is literally the scream that he's making.
Yeah, listen, you bearded fuck. Your site is going down. All right.
No, Dictator Phil, I'll do anything. I'll verify you. And, I'll verify you and Trent and Sam and anything. Just please don't tell Trump not to regulate me.
I don't think, you know what? I'm not sure. I'm not so sure it's Jack as much as it is. I don't think it's Jack so much Jack as much as it is his fucking, like, all the people underneath him.
Yeah,
because we're forgetting like they're headquartered in San Francisco. They have a whole bunch of SJW working underneath them, and like because he himself he's like this guy from the Midwest or some shit. Like I mean, yeah, I'm sure he's an SJW too, but like I don't think he's the one that's really calling the
Well,
shots as much as it is
no,
the people
actually,
underneath
when he
them.
was on Joe Rogan with that other girl.
Yeah, the Vijaya. Is
The
that
two of them.
Vijaya?
The vagina
She's
god?
bad. Yeah, she was bad. Like she's
Yeah.
bad. If you ever see her Twitter page, holy God, that is SJW all over. And then they had who's the other guy? The fucking the integrity, the chief of integrity, whatever the fuck that meant. But like, yeah, he was like crazy too with like his anti-Trump shit.
It's not the first time we've heard an integrity chair that's not very integritous.
Yeah,
you guys will get that reference, but
that was another thing in the executive order was is he's actually trying to ban the use of third parties as regulatory censorship.
As PLC, DTF code.
Yeah, so because what's happened is all these think tanks and all these independent groups have been to essentially cut off transparency so that Facebook can say, oh, we didn't make this decision, we outsourced this decision to so-and-so organization, and they made this decision. So the executive order explicitly states you can't do that. So Trump kind of cut him off on a lot of the a lot of the techniques they've been using for not taking responsibility for their actions. That's ultimately what this executive order is about, is forcing them to take responsibility for their own censorous behavior.
Yeah, I don't like the pushback on the like Twitter tweeted that the EO was like a hasty decision and all that. Like look at the fucking EO. Like look at the draft of the EO. Does that look like something that was made like off of a fucking whim? It looked organized. It looked like it took some time. Like and you look at Chanel Rion. She was saying that they were talking about this in 2019, and that this whole thing was like the last. It's been sitting there. Yeah,
they just had to fucking change the date on it. Is all they probably had to do.
Yeah,
well, I don't see why they weren't working. I don't see why they weren't working on this like the day that Trump got in office. Though that's when shit should have started.
Maybe they did, and another interesting clause is actually the one where they talk about Chinese propaganda on these social networks. And I think it was a very interesting thing to see highlighted, in an executive order from the president of the United States, calling these companies acting with China, especially in light of everything that's happened with COVID-19 and all of the, misinformation and politicalization of that information and the lockdowns. I mean, technically I'm sitting in a state that's still on lockdown because of a virus now we know has like a ridiculously low fatality and doesn't even seem to be affecting Americans like it did. So it's we're living in times where straight up major social media companies like Reddit, for example, I mean, they took a major reinvestment round from Tencent Venture, and they basically become a propaganda arm for the Chinese Communist Party. And like they need to be called out. Like something needs to be done. Our American social media companies should not be beholden to the Chinese Communist Party. And if they're going to start pushing Chinese propaganda, especially Chinese propaganda that is against the interests of the United States of America, regulation has to happen in that regard. Like something has to happen. This isn't a free speech issue. This actually becomes a money and collusion issue because the Chinese government's paying for this. They're buying American companies and using them as their propaganda.
The other thing to add to that is like when you mentioned the third party sort of colluding with Twitter is, this is the other thing too, is when people, when certain people get banned, it's not necessarily Jack Dorsey or that other girl, I keep forgetting her name.
Vagina. Sorry, that's my nickname for her.
I'm gonna say V and not the V from V for Vendetta, but she would just go, and it's not just her just going, ooh, Milo Yiannopoulos is on Twitter banned. Ooh, Gavin McInnes is here banned. It is sometimes, this was the case with Alex, outside people basically lobbying Twitter to ban people. Oliver Darcy from CNN lobbied Twitter to ban Alex Jones. He lobbied a bunch of other tech companies to do so, and he eventually got what he wanted. And that's why the whole spooky thing, the whole Orwellian sort of silencing of Alex Jones from the entire internet, pretty much, from the entire social sphere of the internet, within 24 hours is really because of Oliver Darcy, because he was lobbying all these tech companies. That's my theory, and part of it's proven. I think we know he was talking to Twitter and Facebook. I'd have to fact check it, but he was at least talking to one of those. And
He bragged
you
about
have
it.
that. Yeah, and he brags about he has articles writing this shit where he's like demanding them to do it. I mean, that's the thing is like it's not just the companies, but also people lobbying and influencing the companies. And for all you know, he could be going, Twitter might when Twitter was one of the last ones to ban him too. They probably might have been holding back, and Oliver might have threatened them, said, "Hey, you don't do this, I'm gonna do this to you. You don't ban Alex, I'm gonna fuck you this way." So again, as much as like we said, Twitter is a SJW and they're censoring people, but why? The why is very deep and has many, many implications to it.
Yeah, let me just, Trent, do you know if Twitter has any kind of like Chinese investment of any kind or
No,
like any kind
Not
of
that I'm
because it's
their
odd.
biggest ties are so Twitter's biggest ties that are concerning to the interests of America is Saudi Arabia. And they do one of their largest investors. I believe had more shares of the company at one point than Jack himself, and maybe still does. I haven't checked recently, but was a Saudi prince. Saudis definitely have pushed an agenda on Twitter, and Twitter has definitely pushed a lot of Saudi pro styled and implemented policies that wouldn't normally have been implemented. So we've definitely seen that influence. The Chinese influence in terms of social media companies, the biggest, most obvious one is Reddit. And I'd say the second biggest is possibly Facebook. I mean, there was this story recently that Zuckerberg asked Xi Jinping to name his child. Like, I don't know if that story's accurate or not, but like, there's some weird Facebook connections to China. Obviously Google and China have a very intimate relationship. And Google was working on the Dragonfly project for them and was working to the Chinese people and prevent them from being able to look up terms like human rights, and was basically creating a surveillance system for the Chinese Communist Party. So you definitely got Google with plenty of interests in China, and then the biggest, but one of the biggest players in China is what's interesting with Apple though is I'm not sure this executive order will really affect Apple too much, because the only generated content that they have is iTunes and their podcasting system. They do have the App Store, where obviously, they've blocked Gab and some of these other social media networks that they've disagreed with. They've deleted certain things, but it's kind of a different situation because you can argue those are still within good faith, and it's not quite as a social media site where they're behaving like a publisher. Like Apple like straight up says, we are the publisher of, and we moderate it with these rules, and they're fairly transparent about it. So I don't know if there's much of an argument there. But Apple obviously has most of their manufacturing capacity in China, and would be able to sell their products for the price points that they sell them at if it wasn't from China's. So have significant ties. The other big one is Hollywood. Hollywood has significant ties to China. If you watch the latest Terminator movie, it straight up says at the beginning of the movie, this is production, and they just put their name on it now. Like, they're not even hiding. They're straight up saying, oh yeah, this is Chinese funded propaganda. Joy. We bought your favorite character.
Like they had, like you used to look it up. Now of course, we haven't used Fandango for a while. Like I stopped using it long before that anyway. But you used to be at like you look on Fandango, it's like, okay, what movie's playing? You look up half of these movies and they have some sort of Chinese production company that's like pumping bullshit money into
TikTok.
into it. Yeah. And
is
like
the other one. TikTok
Chinese
is
spyware.
that is the Chinese
by the way,
government.
on a side note, could you imagine the Mark Zuckerberg conversation with Xi Jinping? Like, oh, you must provide me permanent identification for my succession unit. Like I just see it being like the weirdest conversation ever.
I think Xi Jinping turned him down.
Yeah, he's probably like, what?
See, people thought Elon Musk gave his baby the weirdest, like most robotic name ever. I bet Zuckerberg had something up his sleeve that was like, "Hey, get on my level."
He probably had some. I'm thinking he probably had some like Prince-like name for his child, where it's like a symbol or some shit.
It's probably some like Masonic
Elon Musk's
Bohemian
kid's
Grove
name
shit.
is basically Ash. Like,
yeah,
when he went on
it is.
Joe Rogan to talk about it, it's basically Ash with some Roman numerals and stuff. But people are probably just going to call the kid Ash.
That's what I.
Yeah,
that's
but
what I thought when I
why do
saw
you give him
that.
such a stupid name though? Like he's gonna get fucking made fun of in school and shit.
Because he's a nerd. That's why.
Yeah,
Elon
he's just like, I'm gonna name. They're like naming an album. Like he's married to not married, but he had a kid with a pop star.
They're probably not gonna make fun of it. He's probably gonna go to some fucking white collar private school, some super private school where they're like
where they're all like super nerdy.
Yeah, they're all probably super nerdy, and it's like, I don't know.
Well,
like that's the thing with those kids' names. So like, I never really like that when parents give their children like ridiculous names. Like I think there was some kid with like Superman's better than Batman or something. Like you'll get stuff like you'll get just these crazy names, and then if anyone like.
Shit.
Yeah, like, and someone had like a stupid name at an airport, and then like the mom flipped out because someone snickered at the kid's name. It's like, some countries have laws against it. I don't want too much government overreach, but I think to a certain extent you have to draw a line somewhere. Because there's people that have been named like Jesus, there's some people who've been named like Hitler, and apparently it's allowed.
Imagine all those poor kids that were born like, and before Hitler became Hitler, and they were named Adolf. Those poor kids. Now talk about bullying. Oh my god. I mean, the thing is, like, with Elon is like his kid. Yeah, and I the first thing I thought too is when I heard that Ash was his name, I was like, oh, they're just gonna call the kid Ash. I mean, it is unnecessary to do all the other shit, but like when you go to school and they're like, "What's your name?" Ash Musk. They're gonna be like, Musk? Is your dad Elon Musk? And it's like, yeah. Get in line, bitch. It's like you have some command of that room.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
Well, I just don't know why parents feel the need to do that to a kid.
Well, see,
like, it'd be one thing the kid chose to name himself, but like you don't.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're like an average family, like if you're like this bourgeois liberal like family living in like let's say fucking like some like trendy hipsterville, and you name your kids like I don't know, what's some like Hogwarts. Let's say you name your kid Hogwarts. Like, don't do that. Just don't.
Or the fucking redneck trash that fucking named their kid like Cinnamon or some shit. Like, they pump their kid out. They pump their kid out of a bathtub in a trailer park. They're like, I'm gonna name him Cinnamon. God damn it! Like, no, no.
I do have one question for Trent regarding big tech censorship, specifically going back to Medium, because actually, Medium back in the day is actually where I first met up with Trent and started following his work. And Trent, I don't know if you remember this, you might, but at one point they actually had a conservative guy who kind of helped run the conservative side of Medium. They were actually trying to be fair and balanced back when the company first started, and I don't know if you remember that at all, but that actually was a thing. I think the guy's name was I can't remember the guy's name. It was Jack something, not Jack Dorsey, but it was some other guy, and long story short, um, Medium had a bit of a conservative presence, and then they went for the Never Trump movement of the Republicans. And then after the election, that guy, whoever was running the Republican side of things, got fired by Ev. And when I actually reached out to him, and asked him like why he left or got dismissed, and he told me that he couldn't talk about it. But the way in which he messaged me about it, he was not happy about the way he left. I could tell. So that was very interesting in and of itself. So
yeah, I mean, so for some context, I didn't know him, but or know of him even, but for some context, I mean, Medium featured one of my articles about the 2016 election that kind of put me on the forefront because it was on their homepage.
Yeah, I remember that.
They featured me for like 3 days. So like,
Shit.
On one hand, I'm like, all right, cool. Like they gave me some love. Like, the art, the funny thing was the article went viral before they put me on the homepage. I had, and most of my traffic was coming from Facebook actually, and it was just being shared like obsessively. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I woke up one morning, it was, the numbers were crazy into the millions. And then once they saw like, oh, this is popular, we're going to feature it. But the weirdest thing was there was never, after that moment, like I had everything from death threats to, all these people coming out of the works to, all kinds of stuff and for months afterward. But no one from Medium even contacted. Not once.
Wow.
I didn't hear from anybody at Medium, the organization. They didn't like send me an email and like pat me on the back or say like, hey, like, that was an interesting article, or hey, we're going to feature this. Like nothing. Obviously they know who I am, but they just kind of ignored the fact that this all happened. And then, as I started toying around with writing some other articles and doing some other stuff, they just kind of, let it fade into the oblivion. And then, like I said, they started deleting my stuff. It just became very clear to me that like the more I continued to try to use that platform, like the more I risked being banned. And like on one hand, like there was a moment where I was like, I'm just going to start writing like everything that comes to my mind and just like start hitting publish every single day and just like try and get banned, just by like stating the truth and being honest and like, having intent, like not purposely trying to get him banned, but like, just by doing the right thing and see how long I can last until they ban me. At the end, I just decided not to pull the trigger on doing that just because I didn't want to waste the time, because ultimately I just came to the conclusion they would ban me probably sooner rather than later. And I just didn't want to deal with it. Because at this point, like, even I haven't been doing as much stuff. I haven't been doing my podcast stuff. I haven't been writing as much lately. Like, at this point, a lot of it just goes into a. So, like, it's almost a waste of time at this point. I haven't quite figured out, like, what my next move is in that regard, because most of my social media accounts have just been set. So I can't seem to grow on Twitter. Medium, I can't reach my followers. My email list is what it is, and that hasn't really grown much because most of my ability to get reach people outside, social media has just been cut off. I've kind of been put in, this like shadow container, and I've been put in my own echo chamber, and they won't let me grow past it. So there's not a lot I can do until does something.
Do you think Trump should do something specifically about shadow banning?
Yes.
That's like probably the most insidious thing that I've, like, when I first heard of that, that I've ever even like seen.
So for me personally, I think, my biggest complaint about Trump is not aggressive enough with these things. I think if he's going to be a change agent, be a change agent and implement a digital Bill of Rights. There is no reason why in 2020 we do a digital Bill of Rights that says I have the right to do this, this, and this online. We should have the right to a bank account. Like, there's no reason why bank accounts should be able to deny
That
us
is super
access
egregious.
to our money and to the banking system because of political opinions.
Yeah.
Like, that is so anti-American. That should be a right. We should have a right to. So, not to say that, you know, the bank shouldn't have a right to say you can't be my customer. Sure. Like, you know, maybe you have to switch banks or whatever.
Yeah.
Or maybe we need to set up a more, you know, libertarian leaning bank. Cool. I would rather work with a libertarian bank and know that they're libertarian and they value American values. I would gladly put my money there instead of a bank that doesn't.
Yeah.
You know? So there's certain things like that like those things should be guaranteed, and those should be rights just as any other right. The problem is we haven't really modified the Constitution in a while, and we're not creating new amendments, and we're not asking for new rights, when really what this all comes down to, you know, whether it's, you know, what we're talking about with social media, you know, the stuff that's happening, you know, with George Floyd and that whole situation, what we're really talking, there's a violation of our rights as Americans on all of these levels, from digital to real world, like, you know, getting arrested, having a right to not have a guy put a knee, you know, so we're literally, that is the spectrum to, can I shit post on the internet, to can I not be murdered by the police? So at the end of the day, it all comes down to our rights. So Trump should, as president, be for the people and should be doing everything he can to guarantee our rights. And the role of the president, that's what the president is supposed to do. So he should be looking at it from that perspective, and I would prefer to see something where he guarantees, rather than let's go fight in the Supreme Court and battle this executive order for the next 6 months, and, you know, the tech companies are going to retaliate. Like, they're not going to take this. They're going to do something crazy and react, and then that's, you know, maybe that's what needs to happen for him to actually, you know, there's an argument that this is not enough, or this was even, you know, and I think we just simply need to boil it down to the real problem. And that's the problem, is that we're all in this country just isn't valuing the things that it used to value before. And at the end of the day, you know, the way people had to get their rights back, you know, from the Brits, I mean, we all know what happened there with the revolution. So, you know, we're kind of this weird point right now where we're somewhere between a revolution, a civil war, and like something else, something new.
Yeah.
Speaking of civil war right now, this is breaking news right out of Minneapolis. Not only has the cop station there now set ablaze, it's on fire now, but the National Guard is deploying 500 soldiers to Minneapolis right now.
That's a good segue. Let's dig into that one here.
Yeah, let's watch the city burn live on Real News Quarantine. So if nobody's familiar yet,
would it be inappropriate if I started playing Burning Down the House for this?
Well, you know, it's funny.
Let's get some Bloodhound games on fire.
Yeah.
It's funny. Somebody took the ending to Joker when he in the cop burn, and they cut out the parts in the movie of the city of Minneapolis in there. And it's scary, accurate, and hard to tell the difference. But ever since George Floyd was killed by a police officer, I mean, we'll dive into whether, you know, what we think of that right now. But the whole city is just ablaze. Like, last night it was apocalyptic. You know, people with masks on, the city ablaze, and they woke up and there was all this ash everywhere. It was just apocalyptic. It was destruction like I've never quite seen from these riots before, and there's been pretty bad ones in Ferguson, all these other, you know, incidents.
The Baltimore riots were pretty bad. When you again look at those, that's what this reminds me of.
Baltimore was pretty bad,
Yeah, Baltimore was pretty bad too.
The thing to note about this one, if you have been following Cernovich and other sort of alt media people, and they did mention this on Fox a little bit tonight, but it's not just Black Lives Matter, it's not just rioters, your typical looters, whatever. Antifa has been all over this. They have come from the outside. Many of them might even already have been in the city. I'm not sure, but they've got a lot of Antifa at this one. You know, this one's a little different in that sense. It's pretty bad. I mean, we all saw the footage of the Target getting looted. I'll pull it up soon. All this really crazy shit. What do you guys think of George Floyd, though? Do you think he was murdered? What do you think happened?
Yeah.
I don't see a reason why you need to do that to someone. But yeah, that's pretty fucked.
I mean, it was cold. Look, I'm gonna say look, I'm not gonna say that like we have a chance like with this particular issue. We really do have a chance to come together and say, okay, this wasn't just and I don't like saying that this is a black man from a white cop or whatever, because that's racist. Like you're telling me that one life should like give preference over another because of the color of their skin. Like, no, that's racist. Let's look at it and see it what it is. It is an American who had his civil rights violated by a police officer who had a track record of doing it and lost his life as a result, right? We could come together right now and we could make that, and that would be enough to just demand change, demand action, demand all this stuff. But we're letting all of this other bullshit get in the way of that particular point.
I mean, if you look at the lockdowns and everything that's happened in the authoritarian state and that we've all been living in and that we've all been experiencing, I mean, we've all lost our rights over the last few months here. We've all experienced our friends have lost their jobs. Our friends, our families, everyone has been suffering through. I mean, the number of suicides that have taken place, across the country as a result of this. I mean, it's like 1 in 3 millennials and Gen Z are now unemployed. The unemployment numbers are astronomical. We've never seen anything like this. This even surpasses the great, we've been experiencing this for months on end. And this was the tipping point. This was the final thing that just like that, for a lot of people, this was just it. All that pent up anger, all that rage, all that suffering is just coming out into the streets of Minneapolis. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll say this too, like my other point. I'll just give this one other point. Look, for all the African Americans that may end up watching this video or listening to this video, and you vote Democrat, let me tell you something. You're betting on the wrong fucking horse, okay? And why? Look at all these riots that are going on, right? You look at all these riots going on, and all these riots are happening in Democratic strongholds. You look at Minneapolis, right? I was just looking at this one site that had a, political breakdown of the entire city of Minneapolis. It's like the governor is Democrat, the mayor is a Democrat, the senators are Democrats, the chief
possible VP candidate is let the cop off and allowed him to keep his job and didn't prosecute him.
You have all these Democrats, right? And then it's like you're just gonna let these protesters burn down the fucking city, right? You're just gonna let them like this thing happened. As soon as this tragedy happened, someone should have been like, hey, this is probably not going to end well. We might let the National Guard know about this and tell them, hey,
why didn't
you might
they
want to
arrest the cops?
Why not
arrest them?
I think part of this is political play. I just think part of this is political play because and then you got that's a good point. That's also a good point, Trent, because you have, like I said before,
if I
this was a cop
in the streets on video, the cops are going to come and arrest me. That's what happens when. We all have seen the video of a man. It sounds like we all agree that the guy was murdered by this police officer, and so that's what happens when you murder someone. You get arrested, and then you go to court, and then you determine. So in this situation, they shouldn't have just been fired. They should have been arrested.
Mm-hmm.
Not only arrested, they should have been arrested for their own protection. Because where are these cops now? What's going to happen to them now? Like, they were protesting at this cop's house the other, protecting it. Like, I think there were rumors, at least, that one of the cops has disappeared, or no one can find him, or they're in protection, or whatever. Now you've got the FBI involved, and it's like, had they just arrested the cops, like, they possibly could have avoided. There probably still would have been riots, honestly, because, again, I think this was a tipping point. But there might have been hopefully a less violent reaction. At least felt like the system was doing. The system just literally did nothing when it was so painfully obvious what happened.
Yeah, and like you got, like you have this guy, and I'm talking about the guy that had his knee on the neck that really did him in. This wasn't his first rodeo. This guy had a history of behavior, right?
Is this his second or third murder or death?
Yeah, it's something like I was looking at a list. There was a list on Twitter that I saw, and it was like 4 or 5 other sketchy situations that he was in, right? And so this is someone with a crazy track record of just like civil rights fucking and
violations.
And through this, you look at this whole Democratic rule, right? They're Democrats up and down this the Minneapolis chain of command, and they all were like, "Hey, this cop must be good. Whatever. Why the fuck not?" Right? It's like, what do you expect? What did you expect was going to happen? Right? It's like all of this happened during your watch. And even if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, it's like, well, you didn't give them the benefit. You don't give these other people the benefit of the doubt if this shit happens. And actually, honestly, I don't really recall any of this shit happening in Republican strongholds. Usually when the shit burns down, it's in Democrat heavy areas. Like they just
it's also because Democrats always are in charge of cities too, and people that live in cities are left.
No, not always, but definitely.
There's some right-end cities.
Yeah,
but it's almost like they want it.
Is what I'm talking about.
It's always there's always a
really
feel.
Major city.
There's always a feel like they want it to happen. There's just always this feel like they want it to happen because there's always, like with Baltimore and with Minneapolis and Ferguson and all these places, they just let it get way too fucking crazy, like way overboard. And it's like you already know, like any person with a fucking brain cell is already going to be like, look, if this shit happens, like, that protests are going to be bad, so you might want to get ready. Like,
well, where were the cops all last night? They seem to be like non-existent. When people looted that Target, they were in there for 3 hours.
I think they were told to step down.
Yeah, but you got
the Democratic playbook. You just step down when there's a protest and let it burn out.
Yeah,
that's their strategy. It's the most bizarre thing.
What's their logic behind that?
I've witnessed it in Berkeley and San Francisco multiple times. I mean, if you ask most police officers, they're going to tell you that this isn't what I signed up. That I took an oath to protect and serve, and when I'm told to stand down when people are committing crimes in front of me and other people, like they feel like they're not following through on their oath, and arguably they aren't. But if they try to enforce the law, they will face repercussions from the police chief and the mayor or whatever. So there is a some argument in some situation. Okay, we don't want to escalate, which is there is an argument to be made. But unfortunately, what ends up happening is you kind of empower the protesters because now they know they have a level of power that the police aren't coming. So
they know they can get away with it. It's anarchy.
You got to get the state troopers and the fucking National Guard on speed dial. Like when you see some shit like this happen, like, dude, you guys are in charge of the city. This has happened. Like, this is going to burn you. Like if you're a mayor and this is your city and you're already getting hit with some coronavirus shit, and now all of a sudden all the like the Target and all this shit is burning to the fucking ground, it's fucking you over even further. Like
it's not like this has never happened before. Like this is
that's what I'm saying. Look at the pages of history. This shit has happened before. It's going to happen again when you look at what's going on. Like, dude, you have the playbook. Fucking
So,
like you.
This hasn't, this obviously has happened before. I mean, so like what happened during the Rodney King riots? So in San Francisco, they said, all right, cool. If you want to go protest. And they basically surrounded Golden Gate Park with cops, and they put all the protesters where they couldn't burn anything down. And they had them surrounded, and they couldn't leave, and they couldn't do anything. So, like, they know what to do. Like, that's the smart thing to do. Like, give them an area where they can burn out, and they can't burn down the city, literally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
LA, of course, lost control.
Mm-hmm.
And their police stood down. And so the biggest thing that happened, and a lot of things that happened in LA, and the way they mismanaged it, just like Minneapolis is mismanaging it, is when the police stand down, what happens, it becomes a situation, especially looting, especially when you're in a situation where you're in the middle of a pandemic, then it becomes a competition. Oh, I want to steal that car. Oh, I want to break into this. So then what happens is you start having conflict between the store owners who are defending their businesses, people who own property, and now they're having to defend themselves against the protesters and the rioters, and the police aren't coming. So that's what happened in LA. That's what's happening in Minneapolis. The police just stand down in those situations. It basically empowers the rioters to just continue to riot and take it to that because they know no one's coming. So, if there's one thing that we kind of experienced over the last few months, and I've known this for a very long time because I've been around long enough, but there's this like kind of irrational belief that a lot of people have that, if something horrible happens, the good guys they're going to ride in on their helicopters and come save my town. And, the good doctors are going to come save us if there's a pandemic and we're sick. And, there's this idea that Hollywood has like planted in everyone's head that, someone's going to come and save me. And the reality is no one's coming. This pandemic, I think, has proven that no one's coming to save you. You're kind of on your own. Like the doctors won't even give you medications that we know work against the virus because it's been politicized. So like, we're in a situation right now where that's ultimately proving true in the streets of Minneapolis. And it's a damn shame because, the ruling class kind of brought this shit on themselves with the way they've been behaving. You can't lock the American people up like animals for months on end and then abuse us with the police force, from everything that everyone's been through, being told you can't go to the park, you can't take your boat out, you can't do this, you can't go to the beach, you can't do that. Like at some point, there's going to be a breakdown. A lot of the plans that have been implemented from this whole pandemic, this was planned. They have an agenda. They've been planning this decades. I mean, there is a Rockefeller playbook that I was reading like 10 years ago where the Rockefellers, trying to plan for the next big pandemic. And they were trying to figure out what they're going to do, how they're going to react, like how they're going to initiate lockdowns and all this stuff. They've been planning this stuff for this whole thing was planned, just like we talked about with, Trump's executive order. He didn't write this in 2 days. That's been sitting in his shelf for a year or maybe, they have these plans that they've already come and then they execute them. So all these governors were handed playbooks that were written by who planned this years ago. So they know what to do for a riot. Like there's a playbook for that. And the playbook they're using right now is and it's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
Well,
I just don't think that the Democrats, I just don't think why would you let a Democrat run your fucking city after this shit? Because you know that most of these fucking protesters aren't even from Minneapolis. They're from all over the damn place. You're letting these fucking outsiders come in, steal your shit, burn your shit, and then fucking leave and put all your constituents in danger. Like, how do you get reelected? Like, I just that to me, that fucking baffles me.
It's cognitive dissonance because the politicians will go on the news and be like, we're condemning these acts and we're going to do this, that, and the other. It gives these people this like false sense of hope, this false sense of control. Like, that is part of the Democratic playbook, is to give people a false sense of hope. That is like one of the things they predicate on. Like, they, don't worry, we've got this, kind of mentality. Like, we're gonna implement hope and change, like, all that kind of bullshit. Like, that is situations, and they're able to manipulate people emotionally because they know they're emotionally vulnerable in these moments, and they use propaganda and misinformation, and they use the power of the media to change the narrative and reshift that's how they do it. So again, it kind of comes back to the executive order that we were talking about earlier. Like, this is why we need to have a free and open, why we need free speech, so that we can all actually talk about reality as realities happen, without having CNN and these corporations, the Democrats, the Republicans, anyone from interjecting and having a artificial virtual soapbox. We should all have. The internet was designed so that we all had equal footing, and that was the purpose. That was the intention of it. That was the whole point. And what's happened is, all these corporations, all these politicians have figured out ways to use algorithms and figure out how to use software to basically create these virtual soapboxes for themselves to stand on in these situations, so that they can control and manipulate them. And we need to end that. That needs to end so that we can have normal communications with each other, so that we can have conversations again. And we're not stuck in these echo chambers. Even the design of these applications, how they function, how we have conversations with each other on Facebook. These apps are literally to get into arguments with people. They want you to get into an argument with your neighbor. They don't want you like peaceful resolution. They don't want you to see the other side. They just want you to have that heated argument. They've done the psychological research on it. They know what they're doing. They buried it, and they just pretend that all of this is okay. But at the end of it's unfortunately social media, all the propaganda, and all of these, and then of course the authoritarian lockdowns and everything they've done because of the coronavirus, this whole situation. Like, of course there was gonna be a blowback. Like, you can't just keep forcing a pendulum to one side. Like, eventually it has to go back to the other side, and you're going to get a reaction. So what we're seeing in Minneapolis is that, and it's a combination of all of these things, because we've even lost the ability just to go on the internet and talk to our friends, like the way, without being interfered with, without being attacked, without risking losing, without, being socially ostracized just because we want to talk to people. Like that, like, we live in some really kind of screwed up times. This is totally Orwellian.
Yeah. And the thing I've taken away from the Minneapolis thing, I actually just watched, and I played it here for everyone with it muted, the full original 10-minute video posted by a young woman on Facebook of the death of George Floyd. And what's really fucked up, honestly, is the fact that the cop has him down on the ground. He has his knee on his neck, as we've all seen. He did that, at least what's shown in the video, for 4 minutes till the person's body went lifeless. I mean, if you want to have him down on the ground,
his knee there.
It was not. It was absolutely not police protocol. It was absolutely not police protocol.
No way.
If you wanted him pinned down, you could have put your knee on his back, which is already like not really probably protocol, but like the place he put it, and then even after his body went limp, he had it on there for another 4 minutes till they put it in the ambulance. I'm like, it's some spooky shit.
It's
like
pretty.
I don't know what's
it's
going
bad.
through the guy's head.
It's just bad. I mean, it was just like, I don't know if it was. It looked. At first, I was thinking that this was just like a lazy cop, or just somebody trying to like just do whatever to get. But it looked. But the more I looked at it, the more the more it looked like it was.
Gets.
It looked like it was actually driven, like it was self-driven. Like I was like, because I'm always like, whenever I see some video on that or whatever, I'm always, my first reaction is like, oh, maybe he's lazy or overworked or something like that. But in this particular case, it was like,
he was enjoying it.
Perfect.
Apparently,
it looked like it was purposeful and then almost, like a sick enjoyment or something.
Well, we're gonna need more
He's a
information on
sociopath.
this. But
That officer is there's no doubt about it. Like that is what a sociopath looks like when they're murdering.
I always feel like now, I always have to use the disclaimer. Look, let the investigation happen, let due process happen. Even if we think or have a good idea that they're guilty, you always make sure that due process happens. But in my opinion, if a cop does this and is found guilty, I think they should get the death penalty, just because like, look, you're given, like, these cops are given they're given authority, they're given privileges that go along with that authority to protect, serve, and protect the people, and so you really shouldn't give somebody that kind of authority without holding them having the opposite accountability that matches it, so, like, look, you look at the cop, he kills someone, you have to be held to a higher standard than a normal human being, because you've been
him.
well, yeah, I mean, definitely. Oh, definitely need to arrest him. Like, definitely. That is right out of the gate. I don't think anybody's going to fight you on that one. But I mean, I think if he's found guilty, I'm always, of course, I always think that, the death penalty isn't used enough in this country. but and especially when you're talking about a police officer that is given that kind of authority, and he should have that kind of authority to be able to handle, like, to be able to complete his job. But if you abuse that authority, you should be held to a higher standard and accountability,
And the thing too is, when you do see like all these videos and the reaction to it, I mean, it's, like I said, it is not apocalyptic, but we were talking about a few shows later, which is kind of eerie, or before this, which is really eerie, is that you guys were kind of arguing, Phil and Alex, that during these very sort of restrictive times, we're all kind of locked down, we're all getting a little crazy, that if another one of these Black Lives Matter incidents happens, there could be a civil war. I still don't think there's going to be a civil war, with this shit, but I do think, because of the sort of, I don't have any better word than like a little craziness we've all kind of developed, but like we kind of need to let it out. And I think, unfortunately, some people are doing it in a pretty disgusting way, and there's also just outside Antifa and Black Lives Matter just coming in, taking advantage of the situation. But I think some people were looking for something to protest.
I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit of that too.
Yeah, and I think there's
they were planning for protests and riots to happen, even in the planning for these pandemics. I mean, they've held these events. The ruling class has been preparing for a pandemic. They knew that there was a possibility this could happen. So they have a playbook for what to do in the event of, protests and riots. And ultimately, the fact of the matter is, like, people protested the lockdowns, and they did so peacefully, and they weren't taking it to the next level.
Yeah, that's great.
So, there is a for the most part, all of the protests that I've seen up until this point were completely, and they were just, fighting for their rights.
Yeah.
Now we're in a totally new territory, and now this is for totally different reasons. And, there's so many different variables that we could, but like ultimately the core of the issue is like, now that this has happened, now, there's going to be this visceral response. I mean, this is just kind of forced everyone into reality, because we've all been kind of stuck. This whole pandemic changed so much for so many people, especially for the people that, led lives of, privilege, that could hop on planes and travel and ate out at fancy restaurants and went to concerts all the time. Like, arguably, I'm one of them. We've had access to, we've been living in peaceful times. We've had access to be able to do all of these crazy, amazing things. And all of that's been taken away from us. And at this point, we're not even sure when we're going to get it back in many places. I mean, even the city of San Francisco today, like, they announced their 4 phase plan, and phase 4 is to be determined. The state of California's lockdown is to be determined. Like, we don't even have a date that we can point to and go, okay, things are going to shift, at this point, and, things are going to kind of get back to normal, or at least we can try to find something that, resembles a functioning society, but they're not even giving us. So, of course, something bad was going to happen. Some tipping point was going to take place, and unfortunately, it had to be the death. And this whole situation. I mean, who's to say? There's an element of this where even we're also probably escalated to some point because of everything that's going. All the police around the country have been told to basically start violating people's rights. And, at some point, one cop was going to take it too far. And clearly this police officer, as I stated, what we witnessed was a sociopath abusing their power and treating another human being less than human. And there's, in the face of everything that we've all had to deal with over the last several months, it was just the visual representation. It was just witnessing in a single moment what we've all kind of been feeling. We've all kind of felt like we had that, that knee on our neck for the last several months to some degree. And to see it and to see that reality, I mean, this is a lot for people. People are going to break down because of this. The rule of law, the idea that the police are there to protect the people, that idea is being challenged at this moment, everyone. And, unfortunately, with everything else that we've witnessed, with all of the political discourse and as bad as it's gotten, I mean, unfortunately, this is going to potentially lead to, a much worse situation. Unfortunately, I think this is just the beginning. I think as we get closer and closer to the election, as more and more propaganda and misinformation gets spread out there, as things just become more and more chaotic, I mean, as the reality sets in of the people that are unemployed, who can't find jobs, basically are about to starve or get kicked out onto the street, we're looking at possibly a whole new generation of homeless people. We're looking at a whole new generation of, and unless something radical comes in to change, to actually put things in motion, the events that needed to take place to pull the United States out of the Great Depression, it took a decade. You can't just undo what's already been done and expect us to just flip a switch and go back to the way things were. It's going to take time to repair all of this. So for a lot of people, they're going to lose hope, and they're going to continue to take their anger out at the system, and they're going to continue to take their anger out at the ruling class, and they're going to blame the left, they're going to blame the right, they're going to blame, just the system overall. And unfortunately, that could lead to a civil war, a revolution of some kind.
What I think is going to happen actually is I think these protests could spread to other cities if they haven't already. I mean,
they will.
They're
very planning on in Oakland, I think tomorrow or tonight even.
And there's they're seeing the craziest shit. Like this one last night, this guy had a fucking chainsaw he brought out in the protest, which looks kind of funny, but it's still kind of frightening. And the thing is, when we're in this pandemic, when we see people, just when this shit went down in the beginning, fighting over toilet paper in the grocery stores, you're now seeing that's nothing. Now you're seeing the true ugliness of people fighting over TVs and food and clothing and all this shit in Target, and coming in the with shopping carts and just looting a Target, filling their shopping carts up with everything and stealing. I mean, it's sort of when you force people in this pandemic mindset, which is really a survivalist, like every man and woman for him or herself mindset. This is what you get. You get this selfishness, this sort of like animal instinct that's coming out in us, and it's ugly. It's like the worst thing that happened at the worst time, and I just think you're going to see like a lot of unrest, and this this particular thing might go for a few weeks or so, but I think like what you're saying is more important, which is the mass unemployment. How are we going to get back from that? Because look, I'm Gen Z. I just graduated college. I technically just graduated a couple weeks ago, and let me tell you, the job market. I've been.
You have no
searching through it.
prospects.
Yeah.
None.
It's just terrible because I've been looking on everything, and entry level is just gone. Every internship is gone, and the ones that are there, and there are some. Don't get me wrong,
They're
but
competitive
the
as fuck.
requirements are jacked through the roof because I have no experience. I have nothing, except with the clubs and shit I've done and side shit. But they're like, oh, you need 3 to 5 years of experience in the advertising world, and I'm like, I'm a college graduate. I have barely 3 to 5 years in college. Okay, you know, it's just it is really gonna be rough. Like
It's going to be very,
lot of-
very rough.
I mean, a lot of
went
that-
through this in 2008. Like,
I mean, a lot of that. I think a lot of that is to they use some of these wild, job resume, like these wild job postings, so they could, as an excuse to grab cheap international labor. But because who the fuck is gonna have like coming out of college, who the fuck is gonna have 3 to 5 years experience on anything?
Yeah.
It's like, oh well, you don't meet our standards, so now we got to hire somebody from India that's gonna do it for 30 cents on the dollar or whatever. And I mean,
unfortunately, this is like, okay, so like the best example I have is like when I was 4th or 5th grade, they told me that when I got to middle school, I needed, and so we had to learn how to write. Like no one writes in cursive, like no one uses it. I get to 6th grade after a year or two of learning to write in cursive, and my teacher's like, "Don't write in cursive, like write in print. I need to be able to read what you're writing." And it was just another lie. And then in 8th grade, they tell you need to know this to go to college or to high school. And then in high school, they tell you need to know all of this to go to college. And then they tell you need to know all of this to get a job. And then and then they say, oh, if you want a promotion, you have to do all of this to get a and then they say, oh, if you want a better job, you got to experience. I can tell you, I've been there. I've done it. I've got the experience. I've been working in the tech industry since I was 13 years old. I've got 20 years of experience. And for the most part, most job interviews, most of the people that I've talked to, even with 20 years of experience, didn't care about 20 years of experience. It's ultimately finding a situation where you find someone you can work with that's willing to work with you, that's willing to pay you a reason. And that's the best you can ultimately hope for, and hope that over time you can inch your way up. It's a completely screwed up system. Like it is nothing like what we're told it should be. It's nothing like what your teachers told you. The reality of it is dog eat dog world. It's who you know, not what you know. And at the end, it really doesn't have too much to do even with your experience. The whole experience is just like, it's a filter for them to just say, I don't want, it's a soft no. It's just another way that they're filtering it. It's part of this whole system that they've created, that they categorize people. They treat us humans. They treat us like numbers. They treat us like, this guy doesn't fit this profile, or he said a naughty word 3 years ago, or, this person did this or they did that. It's part of this whole authoritarian system that we're all subjected to. And it doesn't matter, like I said earlier, like it doesn't matter where you fall. Like if you're not in the ruling class, Like, you're with everyone else and you're subjected to the system, and the system is what it is. And no matter how much experience you have, no matter how much money you have, no matter how much power you have, you are still faced with having to go up against the system. Trump is probably the perfect example of that, actually. That even the president of the United States fully wrangled this system to be able to do something as simple as, give us our free speech rights back. He has to go through this crazy process and, do an executive, and maybe so that we can have a lawsuit that maybe gets us our rights back, years from now. It's just the nature of this, again, this authoritarian system and unfortunately the corporations, the workforce, how that whole system works. It's basically, to some degree, it's, a system of enslavement. Like, there's so few opportunities to work for people that actually treat you like a human. And I've been very lucky to be able to find myself in situations where I've had some amazing employers, but I know how, and unfortunately, I don't think Gen Z is going to get to experience I've been fearing for what's going to happen to a very long time. And now, after this, I mean, this is going to be brutal, because I went, having to, I lost several jobs. I've now been laid off now 3, in the course of I was laid off twice in the 2008 market crash. I lost one position, at the beginning of this pandemic. It's brutal, because you don't lose your job. In this situation, you either lose your job for something you can't control, or you never even get the opportunity to get a job. And the standards that they're going to have for jobs are going to be completely ridiculous, because how can anyone get experience right now when there's no opportunity? So I don't know. My heart, everyone in Gen Z right now who's going through this, and all the other millennials that are around my age, that they're also facing unemployment, and they also don't know where they're next. So there's going to be a major generational problem here, and something's going to have to give. I mean, in the past, they had to implement work programs from the government, pay people to clean their streets, and start building roads and bridges. I mean, that's where our freeway system came from. Post Great Depression, post World War II, people needed jobs, and they're like, all right, let's invest in infrastructure and let's give people jobs. And that was one of the things they did, was they built the freeway, and they upgraded the country's infrastructure, and that gave us a foundation to build an economy on for the next 50, 60, 70. So something like that is going to have to happen. But man, I don't even know if it's going to be in tech. Well, we've seen what's happened with the tech.
But we're seeing it, and we're seeing this, like, dude, and this is another one of these things where I'm like, Trump may be, there may never be another Trump again. Like, and where they're resistant, like, these people are resisting at all costs. Like, Democrats are resisting everything he's doing, and even you got a lot of these establishment Republicans that are like, well, fuck this guy, and like, because he's trying, like, he's
not as much though, not anymore.
But we're gonna lose 2 generations if they continue this.
With the Republicans, it's been a slow grind. It hasn't been peaches and cream when he first got there. It's been a slow grind with the fucking Republicans. They're realizing that, oh, this guy actually knows what the fuck he's talking about. So, okay, we'll give him onesie twosies. And then some of these other assholes have been voted out, and they're finally being replaced with some sort of semi-competent people. But it's like, look, you're trying to pay. He's been trying to push an infrastructure bill for fucking years. He's been trying. That should be a bipartisan issue. Like, everybody wants this infrastructure, because that's how economies grow. The infrastructure is like Trent was saying, is the foundation of a strong economy. And like you're not. They're fighting him even on that shit. Like,
Yep.
I
They're
don't
fighting
know.
him on infrastructure and everything.
Yeah.
And the like I said, we're gonna lose 2 generations to this. Basically everyone under the age of 40 is, for the most part, a significant portion of them are screwed, because there's not an expect. If we do, there is a significant portion. Basically the pinnacle for a lot of people in my age group, we had to go work for all the tech companies. That was, about a fifth of our economy coming out of the 2008 market crash, was building up this huge tech industry. But then the ruling class at the top of the tech industry decided to abuse and started using it against them. So now we're in the situation where, I was telling reporting, like, what happened when the tech companies told all these tech workers that they no longer had to live in San Francisco. Well, I'll tell you what's happening right now. They're packing duffel bags, they're leaving their furniture behind, and they're going back home to wherever they're from, because they don't want to be here. They don't want to be here during a pandemic. Being able to work remotely and from home is treating your employees like human beings. Having to sit in an office all day in a cubicle, like, that is a form of slavery. I mean, there are some people that swear by living in their offices and they want to work with a team, and that's great. Like, if you want to choose that, cool, good for you. But it shouldn't be forced on everyone. And ultimately, now that people are being given the option to work remotely, what's happening? They're packing their bags and they're getting the hell out of these cities. They're like, I don't want to be in a tiny little apartment paying $3,500 a month for rent in a city I can't even experience or enjoy because I'm not outside. Like, so, unfortunately, we've got a situation now where all these major cities have been leveled. They've been destroyed. Like, this pandemic has, and now that people can work remotely, for these people are just going to work remote, and that's going to be the new thing. So, it's, on the one hand, because it means that, we can leverage technology to be able to create a new economy, and there can be opportunities. But the problem is those opportunities will not exist under the current system of the current, because they won't even let us talk to each other. How can we make money if you say a naughty word and all of a sudden your YouTube channel's gone and your income stream, and you can't even sell t-shirts anymore?
That's one thing
wants Sam to speak, so we're gonna let Sam get something in.
Yeah, I was just about to say my audience is kind of getting irritated. Well, that's kind of one of the and by the way, folks, to those of you listening on my stream, I'm perfectly content to listen, just because usually I'm talking for 2 or 3 hours. But anyway, yeah, the one thing I was gonna say is, like, both of the industries that I want to get into, because I mean I'm 25, but I'm still in college, and both kind of my industries, I'm pursuing a degree in technical communications, and both of those, and that major mainly focuses on both media and technology. Those are the 2 fields I'm really interested in, but both of those are kind of fucked right now because TV and radio are both dying, but the internet is also getting censored. On top of that, the one thing that I do legitimately fear is, like, I'm not that much of an extreme guy. I think you who know me would agree. And yet, the one thing I worry about is, an employee potentially, going over, my personal social media. And even though I'm not that radical of a guy, they might think that because I'm slightly right on some stuff, that I might be too radical, quote unquote, for them. And I mean, I'm sure that Sean, you face the same thing. Would that be correct-ish?
On what part exactly?
On being denied job offers for being conservative-ish.
Well, I suspect that's part of the reason I haven't gotten some jobs, because you Google my name, that's the first shit that comes up. I can't talk about one thing in particular just yet, but I've run into a more glaring example of this that really disappointed me. And I can talk about that later. I can't talk about it right now, unfortunately. But one thing I do want to talk about is because I mean that's just a challenge. Like just being a conservative trying to get a job is fucking insane. When you put your skin out there in the game and try to make it, this is your shit. And you know they're like Phil says, there's such thing as liberal privilege. It is real. And you know, I'm trying my ass off really hard right now to get a job in anything, and it's just I can't emphasize how difficult it's becoming every day. Like you hear these people just like, oh, you can just do this, or you can work remote. Like these companies aren't even, like I'm not arguing against the remote's the future because it in many ways is, but you hear people that just like in the media, they're like, well, oh, these jobs can just go. These companies are cutting, and the remote jobs are super high standard, or they're unpaid internships. Like there's all kinds of shit that's going on with those.
The
One thing I
the one thing
yeah,
I love, and I'm sure you've seen a bunch of this, is oh, just go be a freelancer. That's what people have told me, and it's like, well, freelancing isn't that much better. I mean, in some.
freelancing's risky as hell.
Oh
You
yeah.
don't have health care. You don't have a weekly paycheck just coming in to your bank account, a monthly paycheck. Like there's no guarantee. That's the thing people don't quite understand, and people that are saying that probably just haven't done it. One thing I want to point to with the riots actually they're happening right now. Um, not too long ago, like half an hour ago, Trump sent out some tweets. He said, I can't stand back and watch this happen to a great American city, Minneapolis, a total lack of leadership. Either the very weak radical left mayor, Jacob Frey, gets his act together and brings the city under control, or I will send the National Guard and get the job done right. This is the best part right here. These thugs, all in caps, are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and I won't let that happen. Just spoke to Governor Tim Walz and told him that the military is with him all the way. Here's the absolute best part. Any difficulty, and we will assume control, but when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Thank you.
I love that line. Like honestly, I wish that this would have happened like when we had the other riots, but when Obama was in there, he wanted that. So yeah,
The
that's
looting
I
starts,
guess
the
the
shooting
difference.
starts. Fucking contrast to Obama.
Wow.
But kind of going back to some of that other discussion we were having about the online jobs. I feel like this. I remember us talking about like earlier in the stream about the tech bias because all these people live in like California and that's mostly liberal city. I think the long run, if we end up having a more remote like marketplace for jobs, like that could actually help eliminate some of that at like
Yeah.
further down the
For
line.
sure.
Like not right now, because they're only going to hire the like liberals and stuff. But I think like after maybe like 5 years, you can start having more middle America participate. Honestly, I think this is going to be the death of probably New York City and a bunch of these other places, because if you can work remote, especially like San Francisco, like why would you want to live in San Francisco and spend over half of your pay, and you're already going to put into like a way higher tax bracket just going to keep up with cost of living, when you can go and live somewhere else and get probably close to or a lot better pay, like or the same pay.
Well, that's true, but I think one thing we should always keep in mind, though, with all this, is there is still a element of in person that you just can't replace. People that have been away from loved ones know this all too well right now, and I think that's that's what's really been reflective for me in this is just how all this social media, even like video chatting, it's all fake. You know what I mean? Like it's not real socializing. Video chatting is the closest, but like social media is so fake. I mean, it's wonderful, it's beautiful what it can do, but the whole cliche of like, oh, we're so connected with this shit. It's like, we almost feel so unconnected right now, more than ever before, even though we have all this shit. That's just we've forgotten how much value there is in in-person socializing, and honestly, it's kind of beautiful. It's a blessing and a curse that we can, I hope, realize that, especially as Zoomers are addicted to our phones all the time.
What's weird though too is like I have two of my close friends. live out in Colorado. That's originally where I'm from. I grew up there and then moved out here to Florida. And you know what's interesting is I FaceTime them and, you know, like video chat them, but more often than not, I also call them on the phone. Like I actually use my phone like as an actual phone. And it's weird because you would think that, like, you know, video chat would be
the bridge,
but like in a way, like just being able to put, you know, the phone to my ear, or, you know, heck, even to connect my AirPods, you know, when I'm outside during a stroll and just, you know, talk to them or whatever, like, to me that feels more intimate in a way, being able to talk to them on the phone as opposed to, you know, being on FaceTime or Zoom or, you know, Skype or what have you. So
I'm the same way. I prefer the phone to the video chat. And you know, I've been managing companies and startups and doing all this stuff for years, and I've had to go through learning all of this. So it's fun to kind of hear both of your perspectives and coming into it, you know, now, because ultimately, yeah, the phone is a really effective tool for communication. And there's something weird about video chat. There's both a latency issue and also a psychological issue.
Yeah.
Seeing your own image reflected back, that kind of screws with your head. It's like, you know, you're basically kind of staring at a mirror, but it isn't a mirror, but it's a mirror. And then you're also trying to focus on them, but then you're seeing yourself. And then when you have like 10 people you're trying to do this with and like a Zoom call, chaotic, and the amount of brain power that's required both visually and auditory to be able to do that, you're consumed. You can't do anything else. Like, try having a video call and take notes at the same time, and, you know, try to respond to an email, and, you know, you can't do that. When you're on, I can take my dog for a walk, check in on friends and family, you know, while I'm taking my dog for a walk and I'm actually doing things. You can drive a car and talk to people at the same time, you know, on a hands-free. You can, you know, have a conversation and kind of be partially in it, but also still reply to that email you got to get out. Like, you can still kind of multi-function and multitask when you're on a phone call, and you just can't do that. And the fact of the matter is, like, right now, if I was on video, like, do you guys really want to see me pacing around my apartment right now? Like, you know, I haven't shaved in 3 weeks, and like, I probably need a fresh shirt. Like, no, like the audio here, it's like you have your own painted one in your minds, but you know, you don't necessarily need that data. You can still have like human connection by talking, you know, on the phone. Vice versa, there's other situations where like all you need is a text chat. You don't actually need emails. You don't need Zoom calls. Like, sometimes you just need to be able to ask them a question and they reply to it an hour later. I'm like, I mean, we're recording this on Discord. That's what Discord does. That's what Slack does. That's what all these, you know, all these companies do, is provide the ability to be able to communicate with text and kind of switch between these different mediums. So you kind of have to figure out, like, okay, is this a moment where I need to have a phone call with someone? Is this a moment where a video call is appropriate? Or is this a texting situation? And this applies to school. This applies to personal relationships as well. You know, for parents and that kind of thing as well. Like, you kind of have to figure out, like, okay, you know, which one of these mediums do I need to use to be able to communicate effectively? What's going to work for them and be the most effective, you know, without having to necessarily go all the way to the video call and consume 100% of, you know, their visual and auditory and, you know, input. Like that, there's a different psychology to each of these things. You have to use the right tool, and that's just something that we all kind of need to learn over time how to do.
Breaking news right now, actually, the 5th precinct in Minneapolis is getting evacuated, and a gas station has exploded there now. going really insane. Arby's is on fire too, and Twitter is losing their mind over Trump's tweet. Like literally trending with 54,000 tweets as the shooting starts. Apparently, CNN's really losing their shit.
You got it. Like they're letting this shit. Like these Dems are letting this shit happen. Like they're just standing by and they're gonna let this shit happen. And it's like at some point, people continuing to these Democrats in charge, knowing that they don't give a shit. And really, let's pull the fucking veil off. They don't give a shit about you. Okay, they don't give a shit about you. This is one of those things. It's like yeah, the choices aren't very good, but it's like, look, if I have to choose between Republicans where I know that they don't have my back per se, but at least they're gonna set up something for me to, get a job or to be able to take care of myself, or the Democrats who are like plushy and go, hey, we're gonna take care of you, and then once they get in, they do the polar fucking opposite. It's like, and like, why would I choose the Democrats? Like, they've been choosing these Democrats for fucking decades and they haven't done shit. They haven't done shit for these fucking people. So why are you continuously giving these Democrats your fucking vote?
Does it get free shit?
But it's like, yeah, then it's like, oh, okay, so we're going to give you just enough free shit to keep you poor, but not enough to really
bread and circuses.
Let up.
I mean, if you that's the other thing. We don't have the things that they've used to manage our anger and aggression for the system, and all these things that they were designed. It's bread and circuses. It's designed to distract us. The people are hungry right now. They don't have food. They don't have jobs.
Yeah.
There's nothing. Can't go. Can't even watch a basketball game or we should have had the hockey playoffs right now. We should be in the middle of baseball season. Like
fucking training camp. Look, our Niners got to fucking kick up the football season here in a little bit. Holy shit, man.
I mean, this is man. I just turned on the TV and I'm seeing some of the live footage. I mean, they are burning the city to the ground.
Yeah.
This is insane. And there's it seems like there's been protests all over the country, and others. Minneapolis is getting it the worst.
So, someone said in my chat, "Escape from Minnesota," right now. And I mean, honestly, that's what it feels like. Someone said earlier, we need Snake Plissken to come in. The thing with it is, I don't even think Snake Plissken would want to deal with this shit right now. So.
There's a reason I keep my go bag by the door, and I have a 4x4.
I think it's time for Return of the Roof Koreans.
Yes.
Trent, honestly, I know I've seen your photo, but I picture you as like a more hip Tim Pool. I don't know why, but you.
I mean, basically the difference is, Tim Pool's. I classify him maybe a little more on the nerd spectrum, a little more on the geek spectrum.
There we go. You'd both be my friends, though, I'll say. One thing I'm noticing, too, is like on Twitter, this one video was trending last night. That when you talk about the base, like Korean roof defenders, there are people last night, like these sort of, I'm not even making this up, these are like straight up right-wing militias, that they would see like businesses like, trying to defend their shit, and they would pull out their ARs and they would just go in front of these businesses and defend them. Like, these are like the good old boys, these true American people that just, like, when you picture America, you picture these people, and it was just funny seeing that, but also good. I mean, but amongst all this bad, but oh my god, this is just, people are just losing their minds. It's
interesting
crazy.
Too. Like when we had the people protesting the lockdown, you didn't see the whole city, get looted and set on fire. It's really interesting how
it's an
different people react to this.
Oh, like we're seeing right now on the Verse Media, feed. If you're watching on video. So.
Yep, streaming live right here.
Yeah.
Thanks to Unicorn Riot's live stream here at the protest, because there's like there's quite a few people down the streets here, and this is where alternative media really shines too. Is you have all these people with their iPhones that just go down there, live stream it right then and there, get right in the crowd. I can honestly get better reporting than the mainstream media because you're right in the heat of the battle, literally, and people are tearing signs down. Like a lot of these people do look like Antifa. Holy shit!
I always say,
Yeah.
I feel like, and I know I'm beating the dead horse out of this one, but like, you're talking about like with these, and I hate to say party lines, but it's so fucking convenient that the majority of the deaths, the majority of the COVID-19 cases, the majority of the protests and the violent protests and the unemployment, right? The unemployment numbers, right? All of this bad shit has been happening to Democrat strongholds. Like literally all of the fucking numbers, damn near, are in Democratic strongholds. You're looking at like New York, California, and like Minnesota, right? You're looking at all these. They're Democrat. They're all run by Democratic people, and it's like to me, it's like I feel like politically they're sandbagging this shit on purpose, but it's like, you don't have you're gonna have like, are they doing this shit on purpose? Are they doing it like? And do they really think that these people are going to, I mean, eventually people are going to wise up, right? Like people are just bound to wise up. They're either going to
I mean, they're not leaders. I mean, they're just cogs in a system. The leadership on like, they don't even have a real candidate for president. Like, the leadership is just so corrupt that they morally, ethically, they don't stand for any values at this point. So they have there's nobody, someone who has strong leadership is not going to want to join the Democratic Party because they're like, why? What do you represent? Like, there's nothing at this point. They don't represent anything. They represent chaos. They represent represent failing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there could be a major red wave after this.
But I mean, you like after Mitt Romney got embarrassed by Obama, you kind of saw this change within the Republican Party. Like, you're like, where you starting to see some cracks, and it's like, okay, well, maybe how we were running shit isn't the way that we should be running shit. Okay, maybe we shouldn't be giving the nomination to a fucking Mormon, right? Maybe that's not the best. Maybe that's not the best route. And like maybe some of this overly religious narrative maybe is not good. And I'm not saying that religion is bad. I'm not saying that all that, but I'm saying that some of the stuff that we've been trying to, hold dear to us, maybe that's a little overboard. Maybe we should kind of, become more about the Constitution. Go back to the Constitution and what it stands for, and and we're starting to see that too. And it's like with the 230 thing, we're starting to see there's going to be rifts within the Republican Party about this whole 230 thing, right? Gab is already losing their shit. Right, I just got an email from fucking Gab going, "Oh, this is not the answer." It's like, no, I'm sorry. I like what you're doing, Gab, but what Trump is doing is totally the answer right now.
Well, it's at least a step in a.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's of course it's a step. It's not the answer, but it's a step toward the answer, and it's like, but you're going to be getting pushback from some of these, establishment Republicans and some of these like these people that have been around for a long time, just because they don't want to regulate. They don't want to, but it's like, it's gotten to the point now where it's like, you're going to have to regulate to protect the Constitution. It's gotten to the point.
You're going to have to regulate to protect the country.
Right now.
The problem... They don't understand that they don't understand the power that these tech companies have. They don't
Yeah,
understand
they
don't.
artificial. They don't understand how these algorithms are manipulating us, how they're brainwashing us, how they're putting.
I look at some of these conversations that they've had on C-SPAN or whatever. They've been trying to have these conversations about tech, and I'm like, I'm not interested in seeing this old ass white dude who barely touches a computer and doesn't know how to run his fucking BlackBerry telling me about the laws of tech industry. Like, dude, we need to do better. And you're starting to see some of these newer Congress. These newer Republicans go, hey, maybe we should get some people in here that maybe know what kind of sort of what the fuck they're talking about. And but again, it's a pushback, and we're reaching this like nexus of we need to get some of these old fuckers out of there, and we need to start replacing these people with some new people because times are changing, right?
Now,
no, the old guard's got to go.
Yeah.
Now I will say this, and I'm not saying he's perfect, but I will give credit where credit is due. When Ted Cruz was grilling Mark Zuckerberg in that Senate hearing a few years ago, I was actually real happy with that because at least Ted Cruz, say what you will about him, he's not a complete boomer, and he actually understood he actually used terms like geofencing, and it wasn't like his I don't consider Ted Cruz to be one of the older establishment Republicans, because at the very least he's been willing to have conversations with experts about whatever's needed. Like he's been on the forefront of trying to, as far as the Republican side goes, as far as having those conversations with other people of expertise. Whereas I'm talking about some of these people that have been in Congress for like 40 fucking years that are like, oh my God, like that are using that only know about tech from whatever their clerks are fucking telling them about the BlackBerry. I'm like, no, I don't want to hear about those assholes. Well,
no, I want people that are willing to talk to people that, that work in that industry. And it's tough. It's a tough thing, but these people that have been entrenched in this business for so fucking long, they're not going to give it up without a fucking fight. So we as people have to expect that this thing is going to get really fucking ugly. Like the nexus is going to get really fucking ugly before it actually happens.
Well, that's why two things I'll say is, number one, I've always been a fan of Milo's theory of this is a place where accelerationism works. You need to get more people banned, like Ben Shapiro, like all these other people, congressmen.
To be fair,
they don't care until it happens to them. And that's why it's like a lot of these people, and this is why I was a big supporter of Loomer, because she gives a shit. She's going to be passionate and fight this because she has lost skin and blood and sweat and tears because of her ban. She's been banning from banks and all kinds of crazy shit. And the other thing I'll add to that is that my mind's already slipping me. Okay, I'll add it later then.
Yeah, well, kind of just going off that point though, Sean, what's interesting is that Milo got banned for making fun of Leslie Jones in a movie.
Not even exactly that.
Well, that's part of it. Well, I was part of it, but it was a stretch.
Banned for what other people said after he made fun of Leslie Jones. Well, that's the loops they jumped through.
Yeah, that was.
But it was very loose. It was loose because, like, we've all seen worse tweets that haven't gotten that kind of attention. Like we've seen N-bombs get dropped on Twitter by people like that are still on Twitter. Like, and he loosely ties Leslie Jones. Now, it wasn't a nice tweet by any stretch, but like he loosely ties her to like a monkey of sorts.
No,
But he didn't
never
call
did
it
that.
directly, but it was like it was a joke that was kind of like, it wasn't even his. It was very loose. It was some very loose shit, and it was like,
I wouldn't.
it's
even
not
say
something
that.
I wouldn't have even. There's no way he should have gotten kicked off for whatever
Well,
was
he just
said.
called her fat, ugly, and then said she was barely literate, which was true because if you read her tweets, you couldn't even spell like half
look,
the shit she was saying.
she's a shitty comedian and an even worse actor. Like, have you ever seen the fucking female Ghostbusters?
Yeah.
Oh my god,
Pretty
it was
bad.
fucking terrible. My
Well,
god.
Well, what I was going to say, and by the way, to the people listening in my Discord, this is Sam speaking, actually. But what I was going to say is, it's weird that Milo got banned for that, and yet the people who are making... I've seen people on Twitter in the past few months who are overjoyed that Rush Limbaugh is dying of cancer. And
Yeah, that's the point.
they're talking actively about it. And
About Kathy Griffin, that
Oh
was
my
pretty messed
god.
up.
Like, just
yeah, I mean, Kathy Griffin saying that, a syringe full of air ought to do it. Yeah, that's
Well,
Jesus
see,
I-
Christ.
I
by
don't
the
know if
way,
he's
speaking
not
of Kathy
jail.
Griffin, Trent, fucking my original Twitter handle what was Dictator Phil, one word, right? That was original, and the reason I had to change it was I made this joke, and Sam saw it too. I replied to Dave Rubin. I replied to Dave Rubin because he tried to make some joke about fact checking or whatever, and then I said, "Oh, fact check. You're fucking unfunny." By the way, say hi. By the way, say hi to Kathy Griffin because now you're on her level. And then so some shit was happening to my Twitter handle and I wasn't understanding it. So then I did the shadow ban thing, that the shadow ban site. And before that tweet, I was all green. I was green the whole way down. And then I got like two of the 5 subjects, like the 2 of the 5 bans were red for me. Like I forget what it was, but it was like, what the fuck is this shit? I was aiming it at fucking Dave Rubin, who I thought was legit, and then turns out that Laura Loomer fucking blew him wide open. Like,
Well, the one thing I will say, Dictator, 2 things. A, for those listening, Dictator Phil puts the dick in Dictator. So
but I try to at least make it funny, right? I mean, grant you, yes, okay,
But-
maybe I
but-
am a dick in some of my tweets, okay, but at least I try to make funny. So at least say I'm a dick, but you can lie. Like,
agree.
well, that's why we fucking love you, though, Dictator.
yeah,
Phil.
but it's like,
and
but I thought that if I was gonna get censored, that Dave Rubin would probably be one of the last people that would like bump me off, right?
College Republicans were the first.
Well, also though, if you ever want an amusing read though, any of you, go check out r/Dave Rubin, because that entire subreddit, just like RO and Benjamin, is just people shitting on Dave Rubin. So
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too I was going to mention too, because Dave Rubin and Justin Amash and then these sort of people were just going after like, oh, but the free market can solve these problems. And I'm like, one thing I've noticed with these people out there that are against this Article 230 executive order, all of these people have not been banned and censored, and they're all losers.
Well, Laura
Amash
Loomer
is a loser.
Yeah,
He lost before he even launched his campaign for presidency this time around. I mean, that guy just drives me up a wall. He's like one of the few people I just can't stand. But that's the trend I've noticed now. Like the people that back this shit.
Justin Amash is the asshole that doesn't get invited to the party
And
So he
shows
wants
up.
to. So he's the loser that creates his own party, but obviously nobody wants to go to that fucking party. And so, like, you're like, that's it. That's the Libertarian Party right now.
Well,
Like, he's not invited to the real party, so he's trying to create his own party, but nobody wants to go to that fucking party because they're all losers.
The sad thing is, I know like 5 people that support that fucker. I know somebody that donated.
And they're all
money to
losers.
him. Yeah.
And they're all losers, right?
Well, this is the thing too. Is like, I'll tie one more thing and I'll let you go in, Sam. Is that another thing I've noticed too? Is that a lot of people on Facebook I've noticed, and it's an anecdotal thing, but going back to the Minneapolis thing, like I know I had a few people that were, well, a couple that really hate cops before this, but I've noticed a growing trend among libertarians to hate cops.
Oh yeah.
recently. Isn't that funny? I mean, it makes sense because libertarians, and then look, I'm not shitting on people that have libertarian tendencies, that's fine, or if you're on the libertarian part of the spectrum. I technically am, like, right center down a little bit, but like hardcore libertarians though have gone hardcore anti-cop. And it's really strange because they're kind of co-opting the left right now, and they're kind of like, it's like with Justin Amash. The left loves him right now. He's a darling because he hates Trump. And now the left, I guess, in some ways, is gonna love some of these libertarians because they hate cops right now. It's just and they're pro Black Lives Matter, so it's like a weird sort of paradigm shift. I mean, it makes sense because they kind of don't like any authority or oversight, but at the same time, they weren't this way not too long ago. So it's just weird.
Here's
The Overton windows shifted.
yeah.
Yep.
Libertarians are really are super. I mean, this is going to be a duh statement, but libertarians are super weird. Weird though.
What? What?
Well,
Get the fuck out of here, Sam.
You've never been to a Yao
Quick,
con,
quick.
yeah.
Jeez.
When I was in YaleCon, and Sean's heard this story, but when I was at YaleCon, because for a brief period of time I was affiliated with Yale. Technically, I still am on the roster, but I haven't done anything. But when I was at YaleCon last summer, they had this big thing that like free speech and like, tech censorship, and I was like, all right, finally, like someone gets it, and so I just innocently like raised my hand and was like, well, what about Milo and Gavin McGinnis, just as like two examples, and they're like, well, they're far right extremists. They don't really represent the libertarian. We prefer not to associate with them, and if YouTube and Facebook wants to censor them, that's their prerogative. And then I was actually arguing with the moderator. I'm like, okay, but you're saying that big tech is acting like the government, so therefore they're doing harm. So what is it? What is it? Pick one.
Yeah,
So.
we were fighting with a libertarian that like really wasn't into the 230 thing. Like all of a sudden, we supported the 230, the Trump EO, and then we were apparently shitting on business, because business should be able to do what they want. And it's like, by supporting Trump's EO, we're shitting all over the free market. And it's like, well, it's a little bit more. Actually. It's the opposite.
If anything,
action.
you're supporting the free market, because what you're saying is they should be regulated if they break the rules,
right?
And they shouldn't be able to break the rules, and they should be able to face repercussions.
Well, first,
competition and a free market, so that the people who abide by the rules and respect the rights of their users can exist. Because right now, if you were to try to launch a Twitter competitor that respected the rights of its users, look at what happened to Gab. Like, it's extremely difficult. The fact their servers are still on is kind of a miracle.
Yeah.
I will say, as someone who uses Gab or who has started to use Gab more recently, they've gotten a lot better. But I mean, yeah, that's the argument. I've tweeted this multiple times out, and this is my big argument with libertarians: is it's is because they always say, "Oh, more free markets" when it comes to Facebook and Twitter, but but I'm sorry, when you have 5 tech companies, just 5, globally controlling all of the internet for the entire world, basically, that's not
a free.
That's not a free market at all.
Exactly.
The free market,
for some reason, they don't understand that oligopolies are not just airlines. They're not just your electric companies and your cable providers. They also exist in the tech business, and it's because there are massive barriers to entry. And once these things are established, the network effect kicks in. I mean, really, there are only really 2 big tech companies that are creating our digital public square: Facebook and Twitter. Those are the 2 biggest ones, really. And I was trying to explain to our pal on Facebook, like, you don't understand that not only is this not because he was bringing up, oh, it's like if a Christian baker, doesn't want to bake a cake because I'm gay and go to another bakery. I'm like, bitch, don't you get that you can get the same service locally with that, and it doesn't affect your income. It doesn't affect so many other things. Your status as a celebrity, your ability to sell books and movies and shit. When you get banned from Facebook and Twitter, there's no other alternative. There simply isn't. Gab is a fringe, like, echo chamber of Nazis, racists, banned people, some fun people. It's like a whole mix of all this shit. And nobody wants to go into that.
All the people who are kicked out.
It's like nobody wants.
It's its own echo chamber.
Let's break it down to and he didn't understand. Like, we break it down to the finite detail. Like, we're breaking it down to its most basic root. A free market is only good as the platform that enables it. And part of having that free market is having freedoms, right? And that's the entire having freedoms like what we have.
Rights
the rights are essential to having a free market. So your free market should not trump my freedoms, because the free market is predicated off of an individual's freedom to be able to make decisions that create transactions, that create these businesses. So it's almost like the main pillar, the main foundation to any free market is, like, especially for us, is our Constitution, is our Bill of Rights. And then after that, we should have our free market as long as it doesn't destroy our rights, as long as it doesn't take a shit on our rights.
So something a lot of people forget about that you're hitting on here is that in the United States of America, if a corporation did something what was considered to be against the public good, such as violating the rights of its citizens, they would shut the corporation down. This happened all the time. Companies would do something horrible. They would poison. There'd be a food company that didn't do proper quality control, and they poisoned a bunch of people. The government would come in and say, you can no longer operate. You violated the public good.
Yeah.
Boom. Done.
Yeah.
End of discussion. So that has always been a part of the free market, to be able to have a government and a regulatory body that can come in and say, hey, you've violated of your users, you've violated your customers' rights. You can't do business here anymore. So that has always been a function of the government, and that is probably the only logical argument of why we even need a government. So is that there needs to be that one kind of regulatory body that can come in these situations and regulate it. That is pretty much, for me, as someone who does have libertarian beliefs, that is the only reason why I'm willing to accept any form of government, is to have a kind of a third party legal system and arbitrator in those kinds of situations. But if the government doesn't do that, and we end up with these monopolies, and we end up with these mega corporations, these multinational mega corporations that aren't even beholden to the countries that they actually are residents in or citizens in, then we've got a problem, because now we're having Sharia law, Chinese Communist Party propaganda shoved down our throats, and we're being told that we don't have any rights and we can't do this and we can't do that. And you just even the fact that if you tweet at the wrong person on Twitter, your account can be shut, just speaks to the fact that we basically have a selected, and if you even insult the selected class, then you get down ranked in the algorithm. You can't even insult them. You can't even make a joke about them. You literally lose your ability to participate in the public square because you said something naughty about someone who's one of the protected, and that shouldn't exist. There's no logical argument for why there needs to be a protected class within a. So what these supposed libertarians don't seem to understand is that in order for freedom to, and in order for a free market to exist, there has to be competition.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And right now there is
There's
no
no
competition because
Nope.
you can't compete. You can't compete because these companies haven't been regulated, and what they're also not understanding is the power of the technology that these companies have and how much power and control they have over the perception of the American people, and not just the American people, they are brainwashing and controlling the thoughts and interactions and communication of every person on the planet who's using a mobile device, or of any form of a computer. So they're not just controlling the United States, they're controlling the entire world. So the dichotomy here is something we've never experienced in human history before. This has never happened before. We've never had corporations that are more powerful than the government to the extent that they're global entities and they're not necessarily even beholden to their own values of the corporation where their headquarters are based in. So these people, these tech executives, they see themselves as these global citizens, and they see themselves as not beholden to U.S. law. They see themselves as, these oligarchs of essentially their own, kingdoms that they've created that are global. They don't seem to understand that has implications within their own country that prevents freedom, that prevents, the rights of themselves and their own citizens to be able to actually communicate with each other. I mean, creating any technology, any tech worker who has created any system that has been used to surveil or subjugate the people of China, I don't know how they can sleep at night. Enabling the Chinese Communist Party to surveil people and put them in internment camps and murder them and, take their rights away and brainwash them. What are they doing? There's nothing free market about that, freedom about that. This is just straight up slavery, and this is straight up communism. So these people just simply need a reality check because they just don't understand what's happening. They don't get the technology. They don't understand the power that these algorithms and these AIs and all of this stuff and what it can actually do and how it works in real time. That's the other thing they don't comprehend.
I don't stuff that Alex Jones has been saying, it's like, yeah, he's got some crazy stuff, but he's actually been right on a lot of stuff too. Like, and it's hard for me to now. It's hard for me to discount like completely, because it's like I've been lied to on a regular basis with MSNBC. And like with at least with Alex Jones, it's like, well, shit, he's actually been right on a couple of this stuff, and like really right. Like, and so it's hard for me to like,
yeah,
I don't know.
And when you live in an age when big tech is censoring these people, you always have that effect that, and it's not necessarily true too, that they're trying to silence him because he's speaking the truth. Oh, he must be right if they're silencing. That's not always true, but that thought does get in your mind. And when you see a bunch of effective people getting banned on Twitter, it makes you really start to wonder about things. And speaking of that stuff too, I thought of a good thing too that I love to challenge to my libertarian friends. And I actually know their answer too, because of some things I've heard them say. Let's say Twitter banned black people from going on their platform, and there was systematic racism on Twitter against black people. Would that be allowed? Is that free markets? And they're probably going to say, well, I believe in repealing the Civil Rights Act. And I'd be like, okay, well, we're on different pages there, buddy. But, the point I'm trying to make is that you can tell, like, when you apply shit like that, you realize people aren't really thinking on shit. And I think you worded it perfectly, Trent, when you said, it's not a free market because there's no competition. That's the simplest way to put it.
Yeah.
You can't make that argument.
Yeah, that was a great line.
Well, I think there's other stuff in there too that's preventing it. Like if it was just the social media companies that were discriminating, it'd be one thing. But when you have banks and online services, like even like server hosting, like honestly, I think that this should just be the start. Like that needs to be a huge thing. Is getting PayPal, getting to be involved in credit card, PayPal, banks, and then start to go to internet hosting providers. But like honestly, I think for a lot of these social media companies too, I think maybe an even better way to go and push this instead, maybe through a law, maybe like anti-monopolistic practices, because
it's antitrust law. We have this law. We used it in the 90s against Microsoft. Like these laws.
Like basically like look at the Apple app. Like I mean, you talk about the Apple App Store too. Like that's another one they could go and hit for their gatekeeping of certain apps on there, because there's only two real app stores out there. And if you have an iPhone, you have no competition you can go to without violating your warranty.
Yep. And I mean, going back a little bit to the whole conspiracy thing, I mean, I've been a conspiracy theorist my entire life. I mean, my real wake up was experiencing that as a teenager, going through that whole thing and watching it with my own eyes as it happened in real time, and then what was being said on the news and the disconnect that was happening. It was very surreal to grow up at a time and witness that. Building 7 was not hit by an airplane and just miraculously fell down into its own footprint. Like that doesn't happen. That's not how buildings collapse. Like that was a controlled demolition. That for me was kind of my initial wake up call. I went through the Bush years, and dealt with the Dick Cheney regime, because Bush was barely even president. Cheney really ran that administration, and it was, it was hard. I mean, a lot of my friends went to, and a lot of people I grew up with, I mean, they enlisted in the military. For the most part, luckily, they all came back, but they're all pretty screwed up from it. I've gotten to know a lot of people, and I've gotten to experience a lot of things over the years. And everything that we've been told in our society, all the things in our education system, especially in the healthcare industry. I mean, the rabbit hole goes so deep when you get into healthcare and all of the lies and the everything, vaccines to the actual data on vaccines to looking at even the disease. Half of the diseases that our medical system diagnoses people with are fake and not real. They just come up crazy. Oh, by definition, you've got this, you've got that, you've got that. And they never treat or call the underlying cause what it is. And they'll just come up with all these, they call them like definitions of symptoms, and they'll come up with all these terms. They'll be like, oh, you have IBS, you've got this, and then they never actually treat the root cause. They'll just give you drugs to manage symptoms. So our entire medical system is corrupt. Everything that you think you know about medicine or that you thought you know about medicine isn't true. Most of even like with this whole coronavirus thing, like there's hydroxychloroquine, there's another drug called Alinea that shows effectiveness against this virus. Like there's tons of antiviral. Like why weren't they giving people antiviral drugs when they started getting them? We have these drugs, they're at your pharmacy, they're readily available. Like there's plenty of medications that can treat this that we knew would treat it.
It's crazy.
And we didn't use it.
Yeah, it's crazy how much pushback Donald Trump got when he tweeted. He tweeted the names of these freaking drugs, and people lost their fucking minds. Like, oh, this is
because he challenged the system.
He challenged them. I was stunned when he released them on Twitter. Like, and because people didn't think it was that big of a deal. For me, I was like, this is fucking huge, because he just put out something that other countries were saying, yeah, this fucking works. And I'm like,
it's
and
cure.
it's like, yeah, and it's like, and there's so much pushback because these pharmaceutical companies are like, we're not, we can't control hydroxychloroquine because it comes from it. Like most of the stuff comes from India, and we really don't like that. So,
do you know how many people die of cancer that don't need to die? That's completely treatable with alternative therapies, and their doctors will never give it to them?
That's another thing.
Cancer is easily treatable.
I know this is kind of a regression here, but like you made me think of a really good point. You're looking at the statistics, like we've passed the 100,000 death point with the with the COVID-19 thing, but it's just so if you're looking at these death statistics. Isn't it amazing how some of these flu statistics and all this stuff? Wow, a whole lot less people are dying from the flu and respiratory illnesses and all that shit. Well, they're just going downhill like a motherfucker.
One of the biggest lies is, and this is the biggest problem with germ theory as we know it. I mean, this is what they always tell you is, and this is one of the biggest lies of Western medicine. Is they always look for a single cause. Yeah. And they always say there's one thing. Oh, you have cancer, you have HIV, you have this, you have that. The reality is what actually kills people is it's most commonly multiple infections at the same time. Yeah. So you don't die of one thing. You die of a combination of a fungal infection, multiple bacterial infections, and it's when you get multiple co-infections and you get what's called a multimicrobial infection, which is how most people end up septic, which is how most people die, is when the immune system can't fight off the stuff that it can usually. I mean, fungus, for example, plays a very critical role in the human body. When you pass away, it's what starts to break down and decompose your body. Yeah. Everyone has. So if your immune system gets too weak, that process can start to happen when you're alive. That's where most fungal infections come from, is within you. It's disgusting. It's one of the side effects of being human. But doctors won't even treat fungal infections. They're just like, whatever. They won't even give you they just completely dismiss it as a factor when it's actually probably one of the leading causes of a lot of the illnesses that are out there. So when it comes down to it, there's, viruses, there's parasites, there's bacteria, there's all these different things. And it's totally possible to get a combination of these all at the same time and deal with kind of that immune system overload. So most of the people who died of COVID-19 did not die of COVID-19. They died of immune suppression, which enabled other infections like bacterial infections to kill them. So what happened was their immune systems got overwhelmed because of the virus. They weren't able to fight off things they could normally fight off.